be a
Did you say 5-0?
5-0. Yep. We had a lot of teachers, we had a lot of substitutes who got hired this year, which is great, which means we have great substitutes. And but if you know anybody, we really need some help. So, just a little, here, can you switch it back for just 1 second? I just have a little levity. Managing lesson plans, secondary and elementary, and then we'll do some wrap up at the end. So I'm going to turn the time over to Scott Wolstenhume and get ready for some questions.
Okay. Thank you, Nancy. I talked twice already in this room, and my teacher voice seemed to be enough. Can you hear me okay at the back, or do I need a mic? I'm good? All right. I'm not using the microphone. So it's really good to have you here, and I just can't tell you how much I appreciate the fact that you're willing to come and sub in our schools this year. You are absolutely critical and essential to us being able to keep our schools open. So, how many of you are new, just out of curiosity, that have not subbed before? Just a couple. Okay, how many of you subbed last year? Fantastic. And you're back for more. That's good. That is awesome. So, I really, really appreciate it. Once upon a time, it seems like it was yesterday, and just doing the math in my head, I think it's been 22 years ago. I graduated from college in Utah, and it was really, really hard to find teaching jobs back then. It's crazy because we're in such a teacher shortage now. But it was tough. And so, as a recently graduated student from BYU, I had the privilege of moving home and living in my parents' basement and working for my dad for a year. I couldn't find a teaching job anywhere in Utah. And I substituted as much as I could that because I wanted to stay in the classroom. I wanted to build relationships. And it was a challenging year. There's no question. It was not easy. One of my, I guess technically the sub-job was they had this just really, really, really naughty 7th grade student who wouldn't comply with the rules. So my whole sub-job was literally following her around all day long. And she did everything she could to ditch me, and it was just a crazy, crazy experience. But I learned a lot subbing, helping, like I said, to stay with keeping my skills up and learning to build relationships with kids, learning how to manage a classroom, which I know isn't easy. When you're a substitute, you're going into lots of different teachers' classrooms, and they all have different procedures. Last year, my wife actually, for the first time, started to substitute a little bit, and I got to hear a lot about what the life is like in the day of a substitute, and I got a much deeper appreciation for it. So I really can't tell you how much I sincerely appreciate the fact that you're willing to come and do that. And just like I said, I really don't believe we can keep our schools open this year if we don't have great people like you showing up to help, and our teachers cannot be in the classroom. So with that, I'm going to just talk with you the key points that I think you'll want to know when it comes to reopening our schools, the things that will be different this year, and absolutely happy to take any questions you might have. It's always really helpful for me to hear questions from our teachers, from our parents, from our bus drivers, from our substitutes, because as much thought as we put into the plan, I haven't substituted in 22 years, and so chances are there might be things that I haven't thought about that are on your minds that we need to start thinking about and say, okay, how are we going to address that? So please feel free to ask questions. I can't promise we're going to have answers to your questions today. Those things that we don't have answers to, those are the things we'll go back and we'll talk about as a leadership team and talk on what we can do to address those. So, like most of the other districts around us are starting to do, we've created a 4-phase plan to reopen our schools. The reason why we opted for a 4-phase plan was that's what Eastern Idaho Public Health produced for our region. And so the whole point of our 4-phase plan is to make sure that we're complying with what Eastern Idaho Public Health puts in place for our community. And there's 3 reasons for that. One is, I just fundamentally believe that that's our responsibility to listen to our public health officials who are telling us to protect our community health. Here are the things that we all need to be doing. And school districts, especially Bonneville School District, we will have a huge impact on that. In our school district alone, we will have about 13,500 students. That equates to somewhere around about 15,000, maybe 16,000 parents. So roughly 30,000 individuals out of our county are directly related to our school district. So that's about a quarter of our county we have a direct influence with on what we expect and what we're talking about with the public health plan. So I feel a tremendous responsibility to support our public health agencies because they're the experts when it comes to protecting public health and making sure we're doing our part to keep our community healthy and safe. In addition to that, it's actually the laws. It's actually the law that we comply with that as well. And that really helped me be, I guess, more direct with people as they've argued about, well, we don't think you should do this, or you don't think you should do that. You're welcome to that opinion. I'm not disagreeing with your opinion. I'm just saying, I might have my own personal opinion, but as a superintendent of the school district, I can't legally make recommendations that go contrary to what our public health agency is telling us to do. So that's really the basis for our plans. So as we looked at the plan that East Idaho Public Health produced, then we spent a lot of time saying, how do we implement or get as close to implementing the things that they've asked us to do as possible in our plan. So it's really, how does that translate, and what does that look like in our classrooms, on our school buses, in our cafeterias, on our playgrounds? How do we make sure that we're doing everything we can to support that plan? So you're probably pretty familiar with East Idaho Public Health's plan. This is just a really quick synopsis of it. Again, they identified 4 phases. The green phase just is basically saying as long as we have an identified pandemic in our community, then we'll get to have a green phase as our baseline. Once the pandemic goes away, however that happens, and I'm not a public health expert, what it will take to have that happen. Sounds like it's probably likely we're going to take a vaccine and other types of immunity, but as long as there's an active pandemic, there will be precautions that are recommended from public health for us as citizens and for the public agencies in their counties. So those key precautions right now, just the things you've heard about for the last at least 3 months, and that is trying to maintain physical distancing and wearing a mask when you can. So then further to move to moderate risk, which is 120 active cases in Bonneville County. This is where we are right now. And the other key factor in that, I'll just try to emphasize this then, is it's not just 120 active cases, it's also how many ICU beds are being utilized at our hospitals here in Bonneville County. And that's one kind of significant challenge we have, is we're a regional hub in Bonneville County for lots of outlying counties. And so there is a chance that our active rate could stay lower than that threshold, but our hospitals could get overwhelmed with surrounding counties, and that could actually push us into a higher phase as well. So with that, for all those counties, and I think it's now the majority of counties in eastern Idaho have been identified as being in moderate risk. So when that happens, then the Public Health Board issues a public health proclamation, a public health order, and says this is what is now a legal requirement for people to do. So what changes between green and yellow is that idea of wearing masks. In green is a good idea. In yellow, it's now a mandate. It's actually a legal requirement. So while they're not enforcing it, the reality is you could actually be charged with a misdemeanor if you go to a public setting and you're not maintaining physical distancing and you're not wearing a mask. So again, they're not enforcing that law, but it's in the state books. That's the expectation. So that's really the key difference between green and yellow, is now we have this public health order saying these are the things we need to comply with. And then from there it goes into a high-risk category. And as I've talked with public health, I think they may be changing the numbers on this. I just haven't seen it updated on their webpage yet, so I haven't yet changed it in our plan. So as it's currently published on their webpage, it's still 440 active cases in Bonneville County. But again, I heard pretty directly from East Area Public Health that is likely going to change and go actually higher. The other key things that they included in that is if there are outbreaks in schools, or I put school services as a school plan, but it also includes things like nursing homes, which we saw early on in this pandemic. It was one of the significant challenges in Washington State. I think they included churches, just those large congregation settings. If they see significant outbreaks there, then that could also trigger us going to a high-risk designation. And then, of course, there's also the hospital utilization right there as well. So key things that will happen in that one is we have to limit our group sizes down to more than 50 people, and that face mask requirement still stays in place. Okay? And then the last one, which is critical risk. Critical risk, if you notice there's not an active case rate number for that. That's all based on how overwhelmed our hospitals are. And so things like we saw again in like New York City and Italy, some of those real hot spots early on in this where their hospitals were completely overwhelmed with cases. If that happens, then East Iowa Public Health will issue a stay-in order, just like we all got to enjoy last spring for a couple of weeks. And at that point, because there's a stay-in order, we will have to close our schools in that phase. The good news is, I really do not anticipate an extended school closure like we experienced last spring. I think if we get into phase 4, my guess is it's going to last 2 weeks to maybe a month, and then we will be back in the school. So I really don't see us going through this long-term shutdown that we had to experience in the spring. So with that, one of the questions we've been asked a lot since putting out the plan is, when will we know when we're changing phases? Is that going to be we're in phase 1 on Monday, and then also we get a notice and now Tuesday we're in phase 2 or phase 3? So those are, again, the key questions that come to us. So we've got to really sit down and make sure we've got a clear plan on how we will move phases as a school district. So after that discussion, we decided we will make decisions about using the plan on Thursdays, and then that change will go into place the following Monday. And with public health, their intent is once you move into a phase, that you'll stay in that phase for 2 weeks. If you move into if you're going from a lower phase to a higher phase, you'll be there for 2 weeks. Okay? So I don't see it being like this. We're in one phase one day, out another day. It'll probably most likely be on a 2-week basis. The only thing that I can think of that would change that is if we see all of a sudden a spike, and that spike gets sustained for 3 or 4 days, and public health has to move us into a higher designation more soon than 2 weeks. So, but really, I think realistically, as I look at the trends and the patterns, and you see that chart that we have posted on our webpage today, I feel like there's at least some level of consistency, and I don't see sudden changes. I really think we'll know likely about a week before that we're looking at an upcoming change in our phases. So we will send out those emails and text notifications on Thursdays to our families and to our staff. If you're not in our system as full-time staff members, which substitutes are not, and if you don't have kids in the district, if you won't get it through one of those communications, so we'll have to make sure we're working with Nancy so that substitutes are being communicated with as well, so you know the next week what to plan on as you're coming in and taking those sub-jobs the next week. Any questions on that, on how we'll communicate?
Did they have phase 3 that last spring? Did they have phases at all last?
There were no phases last spring.
They just
So, right, so yeah, what happened last spring, I don't know if it helps or doesn't help it. Nobody knew how to handle last spring. And so, I felt like as soon as this hit our attention as a school district, we were like, this is coming, we've got to do something to get ready for it. We started having a lot of parents saying, hey, we're not comfortable sending our kids back to school. We created a plan that I felt pretty good about. It's really similar to what we're doing right now on if you want to keep your kids home, we'll let you keep them home and we can get online instruction to those kids. But we're going to try to keep our schools open for those that can't do that. But then in a matter of literally 2 to 3 days, the state board said, no, we're closing schools. Everybody's kind of scratching their head. Nobody really knew who was responsible for what decisions. It was just honestly kind of a mess. So what's happened since then is, at least right now, Governor Little has said these decisions will be made at the local level, and that means each region's public health board is responsible for creating a plan for their region, and then school districts are responsible for creating their own plan in response to that. So really, we've been given back local control, which I'm very grateful for. I feel like it's where it should have been the whole time. Public health came out with their plan on July either 17th or 18th. So that's the first time we saw these 4 phases, and then we were able to create our 12. We actually did a lot of work up to that point. We were able to adapt our plan to meet theirs, and then go through the approval process with our school board as well. Yeah, so we did not have any phases last spring at all. So one key thing I want to emphasize is, as we reviewed public health's plan, and again, there are strong recommendations for masks in phase 1, and then really the mask mandate in phases 2 and 3. We just said it's going to be simplest, and I think most effective. Probably the most important part of that is most effective if we require masks in all phases. So I know that's creating some concern among a small portion of our parents and students, some concern with some of our staff members, but it's a pretty small percentage. I think by and large, people have gotten used to the idea that putting on masks is a really effective way to slow the spread of the disease. That's what we've been asked to do. I don't know if it's worth noting, but as I've been to track this story, I have a lot of the same concerns I've heard from parents, and that is, well, we keep hearing different things about masks, and if it's so important now, why wasn't it important back in March when this first broke out? And as I've spent some time reading and thinking about that, and reading from CDC, there's a couple key things that changed. So one is, if getting back to March, there was no supply of masks, period. And so their concern at the time was, if we tell the public, everybody go masked up, then the masks that were available were the ones that they really needed for medical professionals. And so that would have absolutely wiped out the supply of masks. And so they were really trying to protect that supply for medical professionals. And now that there is a really healthy supply of masks, they're saying, okay, they're out there now, people can make theirs, now's the time to really start using them.
Are you going to have a mask standard? And also, are the students, are you going to have a method of wearing the mask? Like right now, I've got the mask on, right, but my nose is open,
right,
my mouth is semi-open.
Yeah.
How are you going to do that?
Yeah, so those are all things, again, fortunately we're an education institution, and we've got a lot of great teachers and others that know how to teach. And so those will be things that we'll be emphasizing with students. Right now, the mask standard is, we're going right back to East Idaho Public Health's mask standard. And I'll just say, CDC, one of the challenges that we face through this whole thing is CDC is updating their information on almost 2 or 3 times a week. And so all of a sudden they have something new out that wasn't there when the plan was created. So for example, they came out with a new web page talking about standards for masks that wasn't there, hasn't been there until I think about 3 days ago. I think that's worth looking at and worth considering. But really, until East Idaho Public Health adopts that standard, then we're just going to stick with what their standard for masks is, which is covering the nose and mouth, wearing it properly, and it should be soft and permeable. It shouldn't be a face shield because those aren't as effective. But what they don't have is like the double layer standard that CDC just came out with. I can't remember what else was in CDC's, but that's what we'll
So is the school going to provide masks like on the buses? Are they going to have masks? The student doesn't have masks when they get on the bus?
Yeah. Yeah, so that's one thing we realized early on is if we're going to have a mask requirement, we need to have masks available. It's I go back to when I was an assistant principal at Hillcrest, when a student was wearing an inappropriate shirt, then we had to have a shirt for them to put on. That's the most simple thing is, instead of saying, well, you can't be here, you have to go home and change it. If you don't have a shirt that's appropriate, here's this one we have out of our closet, you can wear this one instead. And so that's really the same idea we use with masks, and that is we've ordered just over 30,000 masks, if I remember right, so that was enough. So we have 2 for every student, 2 for every employee, so that we have those available. Kind of just interesting things with masks, you know, that cost us $1 per mask, and so it's a pretty significant expenditure for a large district like ours. Some people said, well, hey, yes, the community, I'll bet they would go out and make masks for you. But when we do that, we don't know what those are being made out of, we don't know what environments are being made in, we don't have any quality control on that. So we used Haynes, because they have a contract with the federal government to provide masks, and that way we're not just buying them from any vendor that's out there. We're using a government-approved contract to do that, and we can have a lot of faith that there's going to be quality standards with that. So we'll have those, plus we do have the temporary ones for things like school buses in those areas.
So are they going to allow the students to make a decision on like bandanas or other things that are out there?
So right now, again, public health does not, Eastside Public Health does not, a bandana still meets that definition. I've seen good research that says they're not really as effective and maybe ineffective at stopping it, but as long as they meet public health's definition, that's what we're going to support. From the get-go, we said, we're leaving health and medical decisions to medical professionals, and then we'll follow what their guidance says. So right now, I know bandanas has been a bit of an issue, like with the perception of game colors and those things. We may have some specific discussion just on that particular issue with our high school principals, but right now, we're saying any cloth face covering the covers of nose and mouth is going to qualify. Okay, the one other thing, and this is something we still have to work out so that substitutes and as other people in our buildings will know, public health did give some gave some latitude on people who can have an exemption to wearing masks. Because this is Eastside Public Health in their plan, they have about 4 or 5 statements saying these are people that could be exempted from. So again, we need to comply with that order. At the same time, you know that the more people who don't wear the mask, the less effective it's going to be in stopping the transmission. So we will have a process for people to go and get a medical verification that they cannot wear a mask, and then we just have to figure out how people will know that that individual has an exception, because what you don't want is somebody who has a legitimate reason getting questioned every day on whether or not wearing their mask. So as you go to a classroom and you see have a student who may have that exemption, there's got to be a way that we know as a substitute that student has that exemption. So talk about that a little bit with principals. None of us have great ideas yet, but we'll have that figured out by the time school starts. So, two things. I'm not going to go, this is really hard for you to read where you're at. This is just a broad overview of all of the key things that will happen in each phase. Eventually we'll get into the details of the phases. So, in phase 1 and phase 2 are really identical. So just for the interest of time, I'm just going to jump into phase 2 where we are. And again, we received that designation for Bonneville County on July 21st. Okay. We're limited on the number of people that could be at any specific gathering, and the requirement for face masks more than 6 feet cannot be maintained. So let me just talk about that 6 feet for just a minute. In our classrooms, we can't get 6 feet between students, and so that's why it's going to be a requirement for kids who wear masks inside the classroom. Is with 100% of our kids in attendance, we cannot get to 6 feet. Once we get to phase 3, we go to alternating schedules, and we reduce our class sizes by half. Then we can have 6 feet in between kids. That's just the reality of how many kids are in our classrooms and the size of our classrooms. So with that, the expectation will be that students are wearing their masks in class. There may be times that teachers direct students to not wear their masks, and we're going to try to define or give teachers some pretty specific guidance on what those times might be. But by and large, kids should be wearing their masks during class time. I know that that's creating some anxiety for our parents, and their kids may not be able to do that. but it's such a key strategy in slowing the spread. That being said, as a substitute, and I'll be sharing the same thing with our teachers next week, and that is you won't have to wear a mask if you can maintain that 6 feet of distance between you and the students you're teaching, okay? So that's why I'm kind of sitting like right up here and not walking up and down the aisles as I'm talking. So I know if I'm here, I've got 6 feet between these people, and I don't have to have a mask on while I'm speaking. Now, just to be honest, I'd have a hard time teaching in a mask. I think as it muffles my voice, it makes it really hard for kids to understand what I'm saying. My preference would be to teach without a mask as much as I possibly could. So what we'll talk to teachers about is doing some kind of visual barrier for themselves, something like the mask tape we have here, so they can tape off and say, okay, here's my line. If I cross that line, I'm not going to be within 6 feet of kids. So as long as I'm on this side of it, I'm fine to not have a mask on. But as soon as I go over that line, I might have a mask up. And now I try to work more closely with the kids, because the closer I get, the less important it becomes for me to have to project my voice, if that makes sense. So to follow that same guidance as a sub, if you're at the front of the classroom, at your desk, and kids are not coming up to the desk, then you'd be fine to not have a mask on. But as soon as you cross that 6-foot barrier, please, please, mask up. It'll protect you, and it'll protect the kids that you're working with. Questions on that at all? Yes.
So I just wanted to clarify that that will already be roped off in the classrooms already, so we can have a visual so where we know.
So what I'll tell you is we're going to ask our teachers to do that. I'll emphasize that that'll be super helpful for substitutes as well. What I don't know that is every teacher's, believe it or not, may comply with that. So but I really think it's a really good idea and something we're going to communicate with teachers as they get back next week.
I like that idea for the fact that when I go to a drive-through or I'm somewhere, I have to say, "What?
Right.
What? I can't understand you."
Yep.
There's going to be kids that, you know what? They have trouble understanding and comprehending what a teacher has to say anyway.
Yep.
And with the mask, it makes it that much worse for the
It
students.
does.
And we got to think of the students.
Yep.
You know.
Yep.
So.
Yep. And that's what we're trying to find is that fine line between protecting education and instruction and learning and protecting the health. And it's not an easy line to find. What I do know, though, is if we don't mask up, I really believe we will have significant outbreaks and we'll have to close schools. And so that's always in the back of my mind is if we don't do this, the alternative is likely going to be that we're back to online learning, and I think that's much less effective than having masks in the classroom. All right, so I'll that one back here and we'll come up here.
Is there a question about classes like PE? We're going to make them run a mile in
No,
the back?
no. So right after public health issued this mandate, and we started creating our plan, which I had a great, really, really good relationship with public health. Their epidemiologist is actually a former student of mine, and we've had conversations 2 or 3 times a week about this. And so one of the first things was athletics. And I just said this. I said we'll comply if that's really the standard. We will comply, but here are the concerns with it. We did a lot of talking back and through. Other health districts in the state were giving an exemption for athletics, and ours was not. So through those conversations, they changed. And basically, their wording now says anybody who's engaged in vigorous athletic, I can't remember exactly how they say it, but exercise necessarily, they can have an exemption. That being said, I'll just say I saw there's lots of news articles. I hate saying, well, I saw in the news this or I saw in the news that, because there's all kinds of things. But I did see one post where one doctor who was in much better condition than I'll ever be ran 22 miles in a mask. And so there is evidence out there that it really doesn't significantly impair exercise, but nonetheless, public health gave us that exemption. So if kids are out and they really are like running a mile or vigorously participating in PE classes, then it'd be okay for them to not wear a mask. Okay, I have a question here, and then we'll go there.
Should there be some kind of protocol or training for the students if they have to sneeze? I don't know if you've seen the computer simulation of a micro droplet stream and everything. Why can't students have a much more effective way of responding to sneezing than just going like that?
Do you have suggestions on what that might be?
Yeah. For instance, I didn't say it's perfect, but okay. For instance, if they have an open, I don't know this is instructive, an open bag or something so they can sneeze into the bag, or having a plastic object or something, because how do you maintain they get cold, it's not bad enough, it's really sure that they can.
So just a couple of key things with that. So yeah, sneezing is interesting, and again, that's the key reason for wearing the mask is when I sneeze or when I cough, those water droplets are going to be contained within my mask. Now that's going to be a really nasty mask if my allergies are acting up and now I'm sneezing mucus into it. But again, our teachers will have disposable masks in their classroom. So if the kid's mask gets dirty or something happens, we can change that out. And so we'll be pretty well prepared to handle those things. But again, I think between the mask and then even this is, the whole idea is trying to contain those water droplets from escaping and getting out there where the rest of us are inhaling. That being said, I'll be happy to visit our district nurses to see if there are other things we can do that may be more helpful in containing sneezes. So I think red shirt here and then somebody had to kind of run this side.
So I realize it's like county by county, school district by school
Yeah.
district, but why not a better standard? I have kids in Rigby School District, and I have some in Bonneville.
Yeah.
My Rigby kids don't have to wear a mask.
Yeah.
My Bonneville kids do. Why not a better standard?
Yeah. So the question is who's going to make that standard, right? And so
The health
right now,
department.
pardon me?
Why not the health department? Because
Yeah.
we're all part
Yeah.
of that health
Yeah,
department.
and what I would say is I think the health department has, and I'm just going to be really blunt, if other districts are not doing this, I don't think they're in compliance with that health order. So, and they should be. That being said, if you go to Madison hasn't risen to this level, and so their argument is going to be, why are we going to make our kids masked up if we don't have to? Probably one of the best ones I heard was West Side School District. I talked a lot with their superintendent. So West Side is in Weston, which is like this little town out in the middle of literally nowhere between I-15 and the highway that goes to Logan. And so they're part of Franklin County. Preston gets an outbreak, but because they're part of Franklin County, even though there's no community transmission, nobody has any active cases in their school district, they're closing their school. They're saying, how does that make sense for our school district? So those are the challenges. Is the universal requirement is really helpful until you're the person that is like, well, wait a minute, that really has no application to us, and now you're forcing us to do it. But that being said, I'll just say Jefferson County's under a a mask order now. Bonneville County's under a health order or mask order. If you go south, you're in a totally different health district, and so now you got a whole other set of challenges because they're in Southeast Public Health once you hit 4B. What's 4B? Thank you. Okay. All right. Then there is Hannah. Yes.
So I actually lived in Japan for 5 years, 2011, 2016, and they wear masks there in
Yep.
the winter all the time.
Yep.
You're polite, you're on, really close to people, stuff like that. So one of the things they will do is if they see they actually take a section and bring it up
Oh.
inside their mask, pull it out.
That's
and
good.
kind of wear it
Yeah.
away. And so, and they would do sports, they could do sports in masks,
Yeah.
if they were sick, or if they had a high risk.
Yep.
So it's like a completely normal thing.
Yep.
There, when you hear with all of this,
Yeah.
that's wrong, my kids right away, like we already knew what to do. And it was like completely normal to us.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
it's
Those,
not like a,
yeah. Those Asian countries, they've done it forever. I was in Japan in the 90s, early 90s, and had people masked up all the time there. I thought it was. At the time, I thought it was really strange. But now I'm like, oh, this is, they were on the side. Yeah.
why they don't always.
Yeah. Okay, so in, again, both phase 1 and phase 2, these are identical. And that is, we talk about what responsibilities we all have to keep our schools open. Those responsibilities are going to start with our families at home. So I've got 5 kids in the district, and I have a responsibility as a parent to make sure I'm doing my part to keep our schools healthy and safe. And that starts with checking our kids for their symptoms before they get on the school bus or before we drop them off at school. So we are asking our family to check their temperatures before they send their kids off. And again, this hasn't been a routine in our house at all. But I think it's a really smart thing that we're just checking and in that first line of defense before we send our kids to get on the school bus or sending them off to school. And if kids are symptomatic, we really have to keep them home. And again, this is a pretty significant change from where we've been. If I had a small cold, and I didn't think it was that big a deal, then I would come to work. that's a real problem with this, because what feels like a small cold could actually be COVID, especially with young kids that typically aren't getting that sick from it. And so if they have COVID and it's exhibiting as a small cold, and the parents are thinking, it's not that big a deal, I'm going to send them anyway, and now the kid is sneezing or coughing, and that's transmitting it, then we're going to have a problem with other people in the school getting infected. Yes?
So my question is, as a substitute, say I have a job that day at Discovery, for example, and I wake up and I'm feeling sick, or my baby wakes up and he's feeling sick. I'm the backup person.
Yep.
I can't come, then what do I do?
Just cancel, and that's hard. It's going to create a big disruption for us. It's going to be stressful. It's going to disrupt that school. We need to deal with that disruption instead of bringing sick or symptomatic people into the schools. And so I'm under no illusion that this is going to be an easy year. We're going to be scrambling, I know, often to cover classes, but it's much better to do that than it is to create an outbreak. And so if you see like what happened in Georgia opened up their schools for a couple of weeks, and now they've closed them again. And so I really just want we will follow these key things. I think it's honestly our best chance of keeping schools open. Nancy, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I monitor email at night. So before I go to bed, I always check email. And I'm always checking first thing in the morning. I'm here at 6:30. So if you wake up sick, just either, go in and cancel. It probably won't let you cancel. So just call and leave a message. If it's in the middle of the night, call and leave a message. I check messages first thing, and we'll just do the best we can.
So do we call you or the school? Or
No, call me. Don't call the school. Because by the time the school finds out that you're not there, they started. Because their stuff is crazy in the morning. So it's just call me. I'll let the school know.
Nancy starts work every day at 6 a.m., right, Nancy?
Just about. So I'm here at 6:30, but I always check mail first thing in the morning.
So she'll be communicating with those schools. So is there a question or comment back here? No, we get a little here and then there.
So if one of our kids, I've got 4 kids, so if one of my kids wakes up in the morning, they sound like they're getting a cold, they're coughing, they got runny nose, are we expecting to keep everyone home?
No.
Like, do I cancel my job that day because one of
No.
my kids is sick?
No, if one of your children is sick and they can't stay home by themselves, then it's really just that individual. Because the reality is, it could be a cold. It could be something minor that's not COVID. And there's a really good chance, in fact, maybe there's a better chance it could be that than it is COVID. So you don't have to do that yet. Once it becomes a confirmed case, now that discussion changes, and now we do have to isolate people and get in close contact, but not until we have that confirmed case.
Earlier in the summer, one of the teachers I am covering for sent me a 4 phase plan. But I think the phases were different because on phase 2 we had alternating schedules and the teachers were.
Yeah.
So this is different.
Yeah, so we had that in our original plan that we put out for public input from our parents and from our teachers. And after a lot of discussion, hearing feedback from them, we pushed that alternating day to phase 3.
Okay. So do we have access to this? Is this email out to the subs yet, or?
I don't know if the plan has been. The plan's on our homepage. Any school's homepage, it's there. I don't want to say it's hidden, but there's a link that says COVID resources, and then you go to there and the plans, the link to the plan is there.
Okay.
And I'm going to try and link it on the substitute page too.
Thank you.
Yep.
So I haven't seen anywhere that I've read about the attendance policy. Has that been adjusted for our children?
Yeah, so there's just one key change with the attendance policy. That change is that we're counting students who are learning at home online the same as if they're in the classroom. So with that, we said if students, as long as they're well enough to just engage and do the schoolwork at home, if they can join the Google Meet at home, then we can count those kids as being in attendance. So we feel like by doing that, we should be able to keep our attendance policy pretty well intact. If it doesn't look like that's working, we'll change it. I'm honestly not that concerned about attendance, other than that will kill our budget. But I feel like we have in place to be able to count those kids as being present.
So when we do keep them home, do we let the school know we're just watching them, we're monitoring them,
just
they'll be
call in and-
online, or how is that going to work?
Yeah, so probably for that day, we'll be spending a lot of time working with our teachers, and we'll have to see, I guess, really once we start, how many kids are at home versus how many are in the classroom. But the whole reason why we designated Mondays as basically online learning dates for 7th through 12th grade and collaboration days for teachers is so they can prepare and be ready for that week and say, here's what kids will do if they're at home and here's what they'll do if they're in the classroom. So my faith is that our teachers will have an adequate plan. So if you are keeping your kid home, they should go into either Google Classroom or Schoology, whichever one the teacher's using, and they'll have their assignments and their work ready to go.
So as I keep my child home, I email the teacher and say.
So just call the school and tell
Oh,
them
okay.
the student's absent today. But again, what I really advocate for teachers is just every week they'll have their, at the end of the day on Monday, especially at the 7th through 12th grade level, they'll have their assignments and everything ready, both online and in person. So
I
kids
get that, but do you let the teacher know my kid's going to be online all week this week?
Yeah, if you're going to have that type of situation, I definitely let the teacher know this and they've got that heads up on it. But really, when you call and excuse them from school, the teachers will see that and they should know that, okay, I'm going to be providing online instruction. So then at the end of it, so I guess maybe this gets to the heart of your question, is that student will be marked excused for that week, right? And then as they complete that work, we can go back and we can change their attendance and say, okay, they're actually present because they completed all the work they were supposed to complete this week. That answer, that's probably.
Yeah, I mean, that was a little bit more of how you're going to adjust the attendance and how they're going to get marked, and then letting kids, the school know and kids know, because as like allergies come up and a cold comes up, we're keeping our kids home more often, right?
Yep.
And so that's going to happen.
Yeah, I think our physical attendance is likely going to be more like 70 to 80%. But again, by providing this online blended learning model, where it's both online and in person, and we're hoping to keep our overall attendance full, even though kids are home. Is there a question here? No? You're good? Okay. Yes?
Do you have access to check your health once they get to school? For instance, temperature reading, or is there someone in the office? Or when someone comes to us and says they don't feel good, what's the protocol there?
Yep. So hold on that question. I've got a slide specifically on that. I love the need our staff.
I substitute for the secretary, and so as a secretary, are we going to be marking the attendance when they call?
When you're substituting for secretaries?
Yeah, I've done that.
Yeah.
So are we going to be marking them as absent, or are we going to be marking them as?
Yeah. So this could change. So I'll just say, here's where we are right now. But again, I'm going to go into what any change to our plan as we go. But right now, what I think will happen is the parent will call and say, my student's not feeling well, or he's come home. They'd be marked as excused for that week. But then the teacher would come back and say, the student has completed the work. We can change that now to an online code and mark it as being present. But it's all going to depend on whether the student actually completed the work or not. If they don't complete the work, then we can't mark them as being present. That's going to be key. Yeah, so you still mark them as absent to start, and we'll come back and change that out.
So I have two questions. One is, do substitutes have email addresses to ask the classroom?
So, no, you don't. And I don't know how, I'm not sure how we could.
Because I know when I was talking to some teachers, some of them were okay giving your email address out to do that, but then some of them were not.
Yeah. Yeah. Let me, do you mind making a note about that? Just sub-access in the Google Classroom, and maybe we'll have to talk through with some of our teachers on what we need to do as substitutes with the blended learning.
And then my other question is, if there is a student that we have and they're experiencing COVID symptoms, what do we do as a
Yeah, excellent. So hold on to that. I've got this slide on that too. So.
Yeah, so I was also curious, because this will be my 7th year going on and studying, and I've always experienced like issues with the communication parts. We're going to obviously be doing public and virtual learning. It's hard to have access to programs such as Sun Learning or the Google Classroom or any other like Prodigy, etc. So it's hard for us as substitutes to kind of have that communication
it doesn't mean we can't try out. So, yes.
One more thing that's linked to that Gmail access or the Google access. A lot of times teachers will have in their lesson plans to show this YouTube thing or to go do that YouTube thing. As a sub, 80% of those YouTube things aren't things I can, my profile won't allow me to do it. I have to find another student to come log into their computer so that we can do the plan because I don't have that access.
That's really helpful. I honestly think the reason why we haven't done it in the past is just a management issue. Because if we hire a sub and then they only show up once and then they know they're coming in.
Well, maybe if there was like some sort of, this is the broad sub-blogging that all subs can use across the, so I don't know, it's just, I'm relying upon finding a cooperative student for each class.
Yeah, so we'll work on that. That's helpful to hear. Yes.
I second that, and if you saw all the heads nodding, I would say more like 90% of the time or 100. The other thing is I've had teachers leave their own login and stuff to get around that because they have to use that. I've also had them send it to their kids' phones, and we're all watching it on the phones during class time. So it's an issue that people are trying to get around.
I appreciate that. That's really, really helpful to hear. Okay, anyone else? Okay, so we'll get the part that you've been waiting for. So staff responsibility. So again, first thing is check our own symptoms as well. And again, I might get up and think, hey, I feel fine, I'm ready to go. I've got to get better doing it at home, but I kind of have a computer in my office. And so when I get in my office, I'm checking my temperature there and just doing a double check. And so far, so good. I haven't been, I haven't had a fever yet. So see if I'm not even here, I'm not getting one. So you're not making me sweat too much.
I was told by another teacher that when we are going to need to know how to check temperatures, and we're going to be checking temperatures.
Yep.
So that will be available in the classroom.
Yep. You guys are getting ahead of me. So check your temperatures. So this is all before you come to school. Check your temperatures. And if you have symptoms, even if you've been accepted that sub job, you fill the obligation, please stay home and take care of yourself and get healthy first and then come in. And chances are you may not have COVID, but if there is a chance and you come to work sick, those are the things that are leaving these mass outbreaks. Okay? If a close friend or relative has been diagnosed with COVID, then you do need to stay home and please make sure you're following those. You should be informed by public health to stay home. I don't know that that's happened 100% of the time just because of the logistic challenges with contact tracing. But if you know for sure, hey, my child's been diagnosed, my husband was, my wife was, or I was just at a friend's house, we were there for 3 hours, and it turns out they had it, please go ahead and self-quarantine for those 14 days to make sure that you're not contagious and don't have it here, okay? So we just, as much as I hope that that would be communicated from public health, if it's not, I just need everybody to know that that's our responsibility, okay? And again, just have to lead by example with wearing masks. So, again, my expectation would be that everybody's wearing a mask, except for those times when, okay, now I'm teaching, there's a real compelling reason for me not to wear the mask, I'm going to make sure I'm making that 6 feet, but I'm going to take it off. But even if technically I could say, like, walk up a hallway and out the door and not be in close contact, I'm still going to put on my mask just to show I'm complying with that and trying to set a real positive example for my kids, doing the same thing as the rest. All right, so now for this part, classroom precautions. So we have ordered, have available this type of thermometer. So it's a touchless thermometer for every classroom in the district. So when you substitute for a teacher, and we'll emphasize this at teachers as well, you will have access to this. And we are asking teachers to do temperature checks twice a day, once in the morning as kids come into the classroom, and then once around lunchtime. Okay? The whole reason for the lunchtime one is simply because if a parent is dead set on sending their kid to school, they load them up with Motrin to get their fever down, pass that first temperature check, we need to have a second one to check that. So again, I really believe we'll have 97-98% of our parents that are fully on board, but I've just done this job long enough to know that some are going to be, and maybe for some real reasons, maybe just, okay, I can't afford to take off the day from work and the Motrin to school because I just think it's a fever, I don't think it's anything serious. those are the situations we'll have to deal with. So temperature checks twice a day. That the lunch one is really going to be a school-by-school decision. I know that's probably somewhat frustrating as a sub, because there might be one way to icebreaker or another way to Falls Valley. But really, I don't know the best practice. Those schools are really going to have to decide, is it before the kids go to lunch, and after they come back for lunch, what's the best time for them to take the temperature? So just, secretary should indicate that to you, and the teacher should do that as their lesson plan as well. Okay? But it's really pretty quick and easy. Just, in elementary, it's really easy. The kids are lining up outside my door in the morning, just check. If the kid does read high, then what we're asking you to do is to send the kid to the back of the line. Okay? So don't make a big deal of it right then. Just say, hey, Johnny, you might go to the back of the line, I'm going to check you again. Okay? That's all you have to say. Check the other kids. Then if you have this couple of kids in the back of the line, check them again. So now if you've got 2 checks, and they're both reading high, then we need to have them go down to the office and report it, and they reported a high temperature. Okay? So I'll start back here, and then I've got a few more. So
is your standard for a high temperature the 100.4 like standard?
I've just put in 100 degrees. I know technically it's 100.4, but just for sake of ease, not people have to remember what decimal place is it. It was 100 degrees.
What's the protocol for secondary temperature checks? Because they are limited between
Yeah, it's the same thing. So again, we're just saying first period, and it'll be after lunch. I used to be able to say 5th period. Now we're going to have some kids that after lunch is 4th period, and some kids that after lunch is 5th period. So just first period, and then whichever period is after lunch. And it's a little bit harder in secondary. I don't think jamming up all the kids in the hallway before they come in is the right thing, because now you're going to have just a congestion in those hallways. So I would let the kids come in, and I just do a quick walk around with mask on, walk around, do a quick check. Again, if any kid has it, just kind of make a mental note, and then go back and check them again. And if you get that second read, then go announce it, and go down to the office. Okay, saw a couple other hands that we've there answered. Yes.
Is there going to be like a protocol to have them? Because I mean, obviously it's going to be extremely humiliating for them, and they're very vulnerable at this time in this age, and so avoid embarrassment or maybe like focus. Is there going to be like a protocol to follow, even if, like you said, put them to the back of the line, and then send them to the office, we'll have you send them to the office. How are we going to keep this on the minimum so that there's not going to be a panic? There's going to be like a certain protocol that maybe how are they going to be escorted to the office?
So I'll just say kids get sent to the office all the time. And so we haven't had to escort them, and we talk to principals like, why escort them? We don't do that otherwise. So again, I think at the elementary level where that would be somewhat problematic as far as embarrassment, that's like having to go to the back of the line, and that way kids aren't going to really know, right? The rest of the kids will be in the classroom at that point, and they can just quietly go down the office. So I actually just try to minimize it as much as possible. Just like the secondary kids, just do that second check, and then you just let us say, you just go down to the office and check it in. Okay? And I really think it's just going to be coming home. I don't think it's going to be as stigmatized. For some kids, I understand it could be. By and large, I really don't think it's going to be that big of a stigma. Okay, anyone else? All right, so I think the other things we're talking about. So right now, we're just asking our teachers to, and all summer they've been working on this, we're just trying to get those non-essential things out of their classrooms. I know teachers would love to have reading couches and those kind of fun areas for kids, but right now we've got to try to maximize as much physical distancing in the classroom as we can. One thing that you are likely going to see that might seem counterintuitive, we're going to ask our teachers to put their desks together in the pods. So this came from Central Public Health, actually. The idea is you group 4 desks together face to face. That actually increases the likelihood that those 4 kids can transmit with each other, but it's going to create more physical distancing between those kids and the rest of the kids. So the whole idea is to create a cohort to limit how many kids would have to be quarantined if somebody gets diagnosed, right? If we don't do that, then also the chances of other kids getting quarantined could go up as many as 9 kids in the classroom, versus if we put our desks face to face like that, it's just going to be 3 other students that can happen. So again, I'm not going to tell all teachers you have to do that, but we're going to really encourage them to think about that as an effective way to control how many kids have to get quarantined out of their classroom if they're supposed to start that.
So you do want them in thoughts?
Yeah, we're going to encourage them to do that. Yeah.
And is the office going to be the ones that have to place
you have to do is, so the question was, is the office a place will have the quarantine? And yes, all you have to do is send them to the office. They'll check in with the office. Chances are we'll probably do a third check in the office and just make sure, yeah, it's verified on 2 different thermometers, 2 different people. And now we've got to call mom or dad now to pick up the student. We'll have a sick area designated for those kids. Okay, the other key thing is when we talk to teachers about putting in procedures to try to disinfect their desks regularly. So this, at the elementary level, it's honestly easier to manage because typically one kid has one desk and they're there the whole time. And if there are transitions between where you could end up with students coming from a different teacher's classroom, that's a good time to have kids spray down the desks and have kids wipe those down for the other kids coming in. Okay, so anytime that we're transitioning between groups of students, we really want to try to disinfect. We're going to have to talk to the secondary teachers to see if that's even manageable or not. But for public health, they're saying that'd be a really good thing to do. That being said, I'll just say we're really hearing pretty consistently that the chances of getting COVID from me touching this are remote. And so we want to take reasonable precautions to protect against that. But everybody's saying the very most likely way to get this is from inhaling somebody else's water droplets. And this is not really going to happen very often.
I'm just curious, like, are things like teacher lounge and clothes, and how do you want, how are kids eating lunch?
So kids eating lunch, again, we're going to try to get as much physical distancing as we can, but the reality is they're not going to bring a mask when they're eating lunch, and we can't get physical distancing in our cafeterias either. So what we're going to encourage is try to cohort as much as we can. So again, secondary, it's going to be really hard to do that. Elementary, it's fairly natural to say, okay, here's your 4 people you're around, you have to eat lunch with them, once you go to recess, you can play with your friends. But when you're in the cafeteria, we really want you to maintain that group of 4 people. So again, if anybody gets diagnosed with it, we know that we're trying to minimize the number of people that they're in close contact with.
Will this be based school by school, but like with the elementary kids, I would picture putting your mask on your desk and going to lunch and up to recess, or you're going to have a lot of lost masks?
You know, that's a great question, Marcy. We'll talk with our elementary principals on that. Nobody's specifically raised that yet. There is the idea that while they're in line, they should still be wearing their mask, but elementary principals have definitely talked about the lost mask issue as well. So that's a great question, and I'll put that in the notes about the elementary principals about.
Big. Scott, oh sorry, Mountain Valley's talked about it, I think.
Yeah, they're ordering lanyards that the kids will wear to go outside with.
Yeah, one of our elementary principals suggested
Mountain Valley.
The masks too. So one way or the other, obviously elementary principals are aware of that. They've talked about it, and they might have some specific recommendations on how to handle that issue.
So let's just say that Mountain Valley is selling them at cost,
Okay.
and so that's an option.
The lanyards. Okay. And then
I was going to comment that Woodland was also selling them for $1.
Scott, we got about 5 minutes.
5 minutes? All right. Well, I think we're good there. So, okay. So phase 3, again, I really believe that as a community, as we come together and follow precautions, I have some hope and faith that we won't ever have to get to phase 3. But if we do, again, 240 active cases is what puts us there, and basically family responsibilities will stay the same, staff responsibilities stay the same. The key thing is now we have to go to this alternating day schedule, and so doesn't mitigate the need for substitutes. Our teachers are still, the only difference is you'll have half the kids in the classroom at a time. And so when you have half the kids, obviously now you can't create physical distancing. So that whole idea about pods will go out the window. We'll now have 6 feet in between where kids are sitting, and the masks will still be required in that phase as well. So
Even in phase 1 and 2, we still have Monday where students are doing online homework or whatever.
in secondary schools. Yeah, in elementary, it'll be 2 days a month. The kids are just home and they're not expected to do online learning. It's only 2 days a month. But they'll be in school 2 Mondays a month and out of school. Pardon me?
You're going to go less than a parent now. And I have a mom that has 5 kids, and she's very over right now. She's very much here in that. And she wants to last kids and came out there today.
Yeah. So I said this again out to parents last time. sent it to plan out multiple times. Some parents get another notification last night about it. They probably send one more next week. So when all accounts, if they're checking their email or checking their text, parents should know about the plan and what the expectations are. Okay. All right. Any last questions for me then?
Question. Is this school district going to have a special cleaning task force? I know some other schools, I'm really being serious, some other schools have gone to that.
Yeah.
So that then those, make sure that things are clean better than what maybe the custodians have time for.
Right. So again, what we said is we're going to get sanitizer in the teacher's classroom, not hand sanitizer, but also spray sanitizer. Because it's just a lot to put on our custodians, and they're already pretty well overworked. So we'll be asking teachers to put in that cleaning procedure, that they're wiping down the desk in between transitions, or very least at the beginning and then every day. The other part that comes into is if there is a confirmed case. I didn't talk about this. It's probably worth taking a minute to talk about it, so let me. But if we do have a confirmed case in the school, and based on our current public health guidance, we're going to close out school that day, and then likely the next day. It kind of depends on how soon we get notified about the confirmed case. And then that's when we will take extra precautions of cleaning the classroom where the student was in and doing some of those things. But again, all of that, honestly, they're just saying that it's good to do, but the most important things we need to do is physically distance and maintain masks. And that's going to be what really stops the spread.
Question is not related to that. But when we did the spring clean, and people were able to go to school, you were allowed to have Chromebooks at home. So on those Mondays when the kids are at home, and you don't have access to that Chromebook, or when we go to the VA in phase 3, we have to do what then do you do for those kids? That go, like, I have 6 last year, but now I'm 5, like, I have 5 kids that all need.
Yeah. So let me start with the first 2 phases. So that's why we're leaving our secondary schools open for kids to come in, is we understand that kids will need internet access and they will need devices. So our schools will be open, Chromebooks will be available in the schools, our typical labs will be available. Teachers will actually have open doors for the first 2 hours of that just to help kids, and then the rest of the day they'll be collaborating. So phase 1 and 2, that's how we're handling that. That's generally why we're not expecting online learning in the elementary schools on those Mondays, because we don't want to get into having to send a Chromebook home on Friday and get it back on Tuesday.
They don't have to do online.
Right. So elementary, no online on Mondays. Okay. The one exception is we have to get a little bit of time with kindergarten, but I don't think it's going to be online. I think it's going to be more like reading, going level readers, that kind of stuff. So the only online on Mondays is secondary, and we're keeping our school open for 4 hours for kids to come in on those Mondays to get technology and get help. Once we get to phase 3, and we're alternating days, then we will be restricting Chromebooks.
Will buses run on Mondays?
Yes, buses run on Mondays. Elementary, regular schedule. Secondary, they'll be running at regular time in the morning and then at 12:40 in the afternoon.
So if a kid comes in and uses a computer, he's got to stay there the whole morning.
Catch the bus home, not just until 12:40. And then lunch is available for those kids as well.
I just had a question about the confirmed case. That's just if the child is at the school, confirmed case, right? So if he's home, confirmed case, then it's different, right?
So this,
So like if the student has a confirmed case of COVID and he's been at the school,
right,
then that's when the school goes.
right, exactly.
If he's home, it's fine.
Right, yeah. Yeah, if they're engaging online learning, then it won't affect us at all. Yes.
Back to the technology issue, I think all of us can probably agree, if there's going to be a glitch in the day with something, it's going to be with technology. So this might be a request from my age, so I can keep guilty. But my suggestion would be, if it's something that's not absolutely necessary, and something else could be done instead, I would say just don't do that for that day. Often maybe it is a result.
That's helpful to hear. I really appreciate that. And honestly, I can't how much I appreciate this. We'll be doing a meeting with teachers. It's going to be virtual this year, unfortunately, but Tuesday morning. And so these are key things I can come back and share with them and say, what I learned, again, Casey, it took me last year until Lindsay started subbing, but I started to really hear of the problems that we inadvertently create for subs, and when subs are so critical, we need to try to make your job as manageable as we can. So I really appreciate the questions and the comments. We can take those back and work on this in the story. So. thank you again, and let me tell you how much I appreciate you being here, and again, stepping up and being willing to sub this year. It's going to be a challenge, it's going to be messy, but we will get through it together. So thank you, and Nancy's awesome. If you ever need anything, call Nancy night or day. You're here 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So
That's why I got the big bag.
at about 25 cents an hour. So thank you.
Hey, Matt McKnight is going to spend the 15 minutes with us. Will that work, Matt?
I can cut it short.
Okay.
And I just want to say one quick thing about the masks and the thermometer. We did summer school in June, and this last 2 weeks in August. Masks came in camps, and it was successful. And so I know that there's some stress here with this plan, but this is a great plan that we followed starting in June, that our district leadership has set up, and it's going to be successful. So don't worry, we'll get through this together. So my name is Matt McKnight. I work in special ed as a social worker and behavior support specialist. I take over our supportive staff. Outside of general ed, we have special ed teaching positions. I used to be a STED teacher. A substitute is very important so the students can have a routine. So what I want to do is just briefly talk about the different roles and responsibilities that come into the school. There's a list that we created and I need to update it, and I'd like to have Nancy email that to you. So when you see a can you hear me in the back? So when you see a request for a position in a school, you know what you're going into. My role is to make sure that our staff support our students with behavior, medical type of behaviors. I love my job, but sometimes it comes with students acting out, and we want to keep you safe. And so I want you to go into a comfortable setting, understanding what your expectations are. If you don't want to work in this setting, I respect that. And so we have a list of schools. We're going to get that sent out to you. Kind of a definition of what your role and responsibility would be as a teacher and as a paraprofessional. I also teach CPI, which focuses on how to de-escalate, support a behavior plan. Last resort is restraint and seclusion, and that is only needed if the parent approves it in an IEP. And so we don't want you to do any hands-on approach unless you're comfortable with redirecting the student down the hall. And that's something that as you work in programs and you get comfortable with, then that's something that's your call. But because of liability, if there is a restraint, we have to do paperwork. And I would rather do that with staff than training. Any questions on that? Okay, so IEP is individual education plan, a program developed to ensure that a child with disability is identified under the law, is attending schools, and receives specialized instructions and related services. And so who here has worked in or as a STED teacher or a parent subbing? Okay. All right. If you see something that you disagree with, feel free at appropriate time to ask staff, why did you do it this way? Because we want a team approach, and you're part of that team. And I train my staff to work with you as a team. I feel that you're experts and understand how to support students with behaviors, and together we'll succeed. If you ever need my help, I'm more than willing to come in. I work in the schools. I'm in the schools a little in my office. Question?
So are you saying we're going to be working out that we have an IEP?
So if you take a special ed teaching subposition, so if they're on academics, you don't need to worry about it. But if you see behavior, that's where you're going to talk to Nancy, and she's going to help you understand what school and what position that is working with behavior support. As a behavior support therapist. Different than teaching. Have I lost everyone? There are positions out there as a substitute paraprofessional. You can get assigned to work one-on-one with a student. Okay. That's a good question. We have a lot of students on an IEP, and with that IEP, some aren't tied with behavior support. And so that would be... They don't have a direct. Nope. But they are acting out full-time. Maybe the teachers would be so the question's being asked, when you have a general ed student or an IEP student with non-behavior support acting class, how do you support that student? That's a good question. Do you want to?
Also, I just wanted to say, I lived in the school district for a little over 5 years now, and teachers will usually read me notes and say, Riv is an IEP student and he needs careful instruction. No, sometimes that's not really. Okay, if that doesn't, okay, so if that doesn't happen, you need to notify me immediately. Okay. You need to send me an email so that I can get back with Matt, and Matt can, talk to the teacher in that classroom. Okay? Because that's the only way it's going to get fixed. Everything. If you have a problem in a classroom or something wasn't said, then you need to email me and let me know so that I can go back to whoever's in charge, whether it's Matt or whether it's the principal, or because it doesn't get fixed if you go home and don't pay attention to it again. Okay?
So, also with that, so I did like for special education classrooms and use pair jobs. I mean, especially now where we're really taking things. But you go into a situation where you get a pair job, you see it from a pay job. And it says the student has autism. Or it doesn't even say that. It just says students, you're going to be a therapist. There's usually not a description, and sometimes maybe I'd be okay with working with, someone who may be a little bit higher functioning or doesn't have issues with, physical touch or certain triggers or, because I feel like sometimes I don't want to take those jobs because we go in line.
Right.
And every single student that has a special education need is different and has different needs and triggers and I feel like when we take those jobs, we really go in line.
Right, so your first sub is going to be general ed, then special ed teaching positions. And then if they're all full and you're looking at a paraprofessional, that's where we need to communicate more clearly with you to help you understand what setting you're going
Right,
to.
so obviously these are going to be not your standards.
No. Right. And that's why this list we're going to get out to you to help you understand yes or
Right,
no.
but then what I'm saying is that this is a third job. Going in and taking very specific one-on-one jobs, sometimes we don't know if they only need a student who's going to punch them in the face.
Right.
And they get so upset. Some people don't,
Well, those instructions should be in the classroom.
Yeah, it should be there, and the para that is requested sub should have that information.
a lot of the times I've gone in, I've not had it. It'd be nice to have it as your accepting that job. And as you're accepting that job, all it says is para. Right. It does not say what the severity is.
We'll work on it, okay? We'll work on that, okay?
We'll work on this and see if we can.
In every school, the case manager, I can't be in every school in the morning. The case manager should The case manager should be there to hand off all information. And that's good information knowing that it's not happening.
We'll work on getting some kind of an attachment maybe that it will stay directly in the speech.
It would be easier to accept the job. We have to go in and we have to put a cancel or changing the diaper or.
Okay. Okay. All right. Is that Kathy? I see back there, Kathy Reed.
No, and my question, I mean, it kind of goes like with them, is I'm really reluctant to take these jobs because I don't even know what these stand for. And it has to, I think it has to be,
Right.
it has to be in the description of if when you accept the job, just like they're saying, is when, what your part is. Because it's just a blank statement. It's just a blank statement when you go in and try to accept a job, and none of us really understand.
So if you go in and you look under resource room, paraprofessional, is that how it is? It's under resource room.
I think it's our.
That position is academic only. You'll be in the resource room doing academics, working with the SPED teacher. That's going to be all academics. There'll be behaviors, of course.
But I'm asking if it could actually be in when you accept the job. This is the description of what we're asking you to do that
That's what
day.
we're talking about fixing. That will
Okay.
fix that.
Yep. Okay.
I just want to say this also like for general education.
Yeah.
Isn't there some laws?
Yeah, when it comes to gen ed students,
And there's some confidentiality things that teachers and parents and whatever, there's some laws that you can't just say, this is on an IT.
you're right.
And so they can't always put that in there. No, but they could probably put there. No, you're allowed to. You're not allowed to say something. Well, you're allowed to say, I mean,
Right.
or no, allowed to say, look, I can't go home until my husband.
So,
We know we have a problem.
yeah, we do. There's two things here. One is we got to define gen ed students with behaviors that I don't oversee. That's going to be your building administrator. That's where that direction to go. When we have special ed students, 504 students, there should be a contact daily in the school watching those kids and supporting those kids on an IEP. Okay. And then we will get in and we will email you an attachment. For example, preschool program, what is your expectations? The DRR, what is your expectations? Discoveries program, what are your expectations? Does that make sense? And then when it comes to general ed students acting out, I can pass that on to the building administrators and let them look at that, how they can support them.
But just don't forget, don't walk away from it at the end of the day and think that was a horrible experience. I can't fix it if you don't tell me.
No, I'll definitely tell you.
Except for you, you can't.
I'll definitely.
So, we can't fix it if we don't know about it.
So, just some clarification, if I went in one classroom there, but you're not allowed to do that, you're not allowed to help them. And then I went to a different program, and they're like, oh, no, yeah, you can help them in the restroom, you can do. So, what exactly is the rule?
It's whatever you're comfortable with.
Okay.
If you want to help with changing, you can help with changing. If you want to assist and just watch, it takes sometimes 2 staff to do the changing. I help and I'll assist and watch and hold hands. If you're comfortable, I'm comfortable with that. I'm not comfortable changing, but it's whatever you're comfortable with.
Okay, basically one thing that, well, wheelchair substitutes aren't allowed to do that, they're not allowed to do it.
Assist, yes, but actual change, I would say, let the staff in the school have the actual change. Are you comfortable with that? Yeah, assist, yes, but no changing.
When you have the teachers, because I've been in the high schools and I know some students have engaged experience where the teachers can make note on the role that they're engaged in that student. Because I've counted that as being the student because they're college kids
confidentiality, that aide might be in there for 2 or 3 students. So,
Well, they should have lanyards on. They should have a badge.
Yeah, they have that, but sometimes it's hiding, you can't see it, you know where it goes, because the room's closed. I've had them wear it closed, and like, I'll see a man or anything on.
like I said, you take these positions if you feel comfortable with them. I think that we're going to have a lot of general ed and SPED teaching positions filled first. When it comes to these positions, Nancy will reach out to me, and I'm more than willing to come into your school and show you who the supports will be when you go back to that school and need help. And we have team leads, we have social workers, we have other supportive staff that work as a team. So communicate with us, and I'll come in and link you to those supports.
I could be wrong, but when you go and take roll, when you're general education classes, it says IUP on some of or whatever that thing is. You can click on that and it will tell you.
I did not know
Am
that.
I wrong?
I didn't know that.
No, that's true.
Is that not true? Because I go through every roll class and I'm like, oh, I've got 3 IUPs, or I have medical alert, or I have something that is, there's all these little icons by their name.
It's not in every school, but they have that.
Okay, well, the schools I've seen that, I click on there and I know when when those students are coming in, if my teacher hasn't told me previously in notes and stuff. But if you take roll and there's little icons there, you click on it. Medical alert, it has an EpiPen, IEP, I mean, I don't know if it's in every school, but in the schools that I've seen in general ed, there are icons and you know.
Well, and you can even have the masking, like if there's kids who can't wear a mask, you can add that. That way you would know, as it said, who can wear a mask. Not everybody has access to get on the computer to attendance. Especially in elementary school.
Elementary school doesn't, yeah, you just take that. Well, in the elementary schools will be different because most of these kind of things will be in separate classrooms, you know, and like each other. So Matt and I can work on this.
Yep, and we're going to make on this list, we're going to add contacts. So if you go to Thunder and you're working with behavior, you know the case manager and you know the supports there that you can look for help. Okay?
And if you have any other suggestions,
Please let us know. Yep. You got a quick question?
Well, I do have another suggestion, but I'll just be super fast. Also, what is really helpful with special ed parapros, they're really wonderful people. And it would be nice if they could leave, not a lesson plan, but just a short paragraph or 2 of the expectation of the stuff, that you are always to go out for recess, you're always to do this, so that we're not always having to bother another staff or the lead teacher with those kinds of questions. If those could just be understood from the get-go, it would make everyone's life a little bit smoother. That would be helpful from my perspective.
Well, hopefully we have this ready before school starts, okay? We have a couple of weeks, we'll jump on that and get this figured out, okay? Okay, all right. Any other questions before we move on and I'm done? I was going to go through this step by step, but our opening speaker had important things that he really needed to cover with this, so we'll get this out to you. Okay? So thank you.
so right now it's on the substitute webpage. So you go to the district site website, go to substitutes on the left-hand side, and then when you get to the substitute page, it's on the right-hand side. So you can take a look at it, and then if they've got any questions,
Right.
you know, that'll help us to, you know, make whatever changes we need to make it work.
If you see me out in the schools, grab me. I do have a few assistants that help me, but we have a big district. We have a lot of students that need support. And so if you need my number, Nancy has it.
I have it on speed dial.
And if you're going to be working with a lot of students that need behavior support, please reach out and I'll come in and work with you, okay?
So in this list he has, you know, like in the DRR, those would be the toughest classes. So if you're not into tough, don't take those jobs, because they are going to be tough. In any of the VRR classes.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah.
So those are the most severe, right?
Those are the most severe, and typically we do have some paraprofessionals, but we have what we call CBRS workers, social workers, and BI specialists who have a career degree. We put them in these programs with higher behaviors because they've gone through schooling and training, and it's a higher paying position, and with that being said, they're going to keep themselves busy making a little more money.
And the special unit parents,
And
right?
so, yes, and so we have some parents who love it though being in those type of environments, and so if you show up and you just have a bad feeling that this isn't for you, communicate to the case manager and we'll work through it for that day and see what we can do about changing.
Okay. So the special unit parents, anytime you see those are going to be harder classes too.
And we'll get this email out to you, okay?
We'll get it, Matt and I will have a conversation. Or several, right?
Right.
Thanks, Matt.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay, we're going to turn the time to classroom. He has a tough job. Okay, I have two teachers with us today. Shanna Spencer. I've known her since she was this big. She'll never be Spencer, but that's okay. And my good friend Kara Kersel. Kara teaches at Thunder Ridge. Shanna teaches at Mountain Valley. They're going to talk about lesson plans and what to kind of look for this year and what to be paying attention to.
Okay, if you were here last year, you did see my slideshow. I didn't rebuild it, sorry. But I'm going to talk to you from an elementary standpoint. I'm really excited that I don't have to pretend like I understand high school. So elementary is more my level I'm going to speak to. First of all, when you walk into your class, you're probably going to think this, and I think this year especially, like you're going to be low on oxygen with your mask. Right?
Can you guys hear her all right? Or does she
I
know?
know. Not very loud. Sorry. Okay. I'm going to come up here. Social distance all right on that. Okay. So if you follow a few suggestions, how do I make this work? Okay. If I go over a few suggestions, your first day won't be too rough on you. So when you enter the building, you need to make sure that you go into the office and you sign in. In the office, they're going to tell you anything that's special happening at the school. I fought really hard last year at my school for us to be told when there's a lockdown, because I told them that's not fair to substitutes, that's not fair to teachers. Like, you have a different role. So hopefully that will go clear across the district, but I don't know. I know some principals still want to keep that quiet. At my school, my principal will be telling us if there's a lockdown. So that will help you guys out at that school. I can't promise that clear across the board. But, so you will be told that as you come in, prepare for this. You will also check in. Do you know if that's clear across the board? But they know if there's a lockdown that day, if it's a practice.
I can tell you the earthquake drills. I know that.
We only do one earthquake drill a year, so fire drills, they're doing abbreviated fire drills this year. So I don't even think our teachers necessarily know when they're going to do lockdown drills, so I don't think they even know that ahead of time.
Not Valley, he's going to tell us, but each school's different. So they will tell you if they have any information to give you as you walk in. You need to make sure that you have your temperature will probably be checked as you come into the office, is what I was told. So they'll be scanning you as you come in at Mountain Valley. I can't promise you that clear across the district. Make sure you're checking before you come. Then you're going to go ahead to the classroom. If you walk into the classroom and you're an emergency sub, you probably will not be walking into everything laid out nice and perfect on the desk. If that's the case and you're like, where do I even start? Call the office. Grab the neighbor next door. Get them helping you as quick as you can. The biggest thing I think that I've noticed that subs immediately don't have are copies, right? So the office is there. Talk to us. Don't try to fight the battle on your own. Like, we're here to help you. Usually I run across and try to help with anything if I know there's a sub.
come into it, you need to just quickly know that you have an attendance, way to take attendance. We have a copy, you know, of the class list. I think this year it's going to be kind of hard if we are on a rotating day to make sure you know what day you're on. I will definitely express that to teachers. Make sure you know what day we're on when you're handing something to the teacher so they're marking the right list. But also make sure you know what's for lunch. If you don't, call the office. Like, it's your great friend. Call the office, ask a neighbor. Then make sure you're aware of what the procedures are in the building. That should be right on the copies that are on your desk, hopefully, because you're not emergency. And it tells you the procedures. Make sure you know if they can go to the bathroom by themselves. Make sure you understand if when they're in the hall they need to be quiet, or you know if it's okay for them to make noise. Every school's a little different that way. It should be explained to you. If not, just kind of assume that you need to keep them quiet in the halls. Bathrooms, I would just do one at a time if you don't have a procedure given to you. Let's see. Make sure you understand if there's a rule system and a reward system. If you're a teacher who comes with suckers and candy to give, make sure that that's okay. It's not listed like, do not give them treats somewhere. I would hope that's not the case. Give them sugar. Make them happy. Okay. You need to make sure you look for any accommodations for each child like we were just talking about. I'm going to tell you right now, as a teacher, I would never say that a child has an IEP. That is not legal. I have a child with an IEP. So I don't know what the stance is going to be on that, but that's something I would never say. I will tell you, so-and-so is kind of hard. You know, I gave you a heads up. I might say he's going to struggle here, help him this way, help him that way, but I'm never going to say, this child has an IEP. Yeah, that doesn't explain it.
You're going to have trouble with this. I agree with that. Then we are heads up that we're going to have problems, but at least we know what to do. Instead of waiting with them like a year.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I have one teacher that I sub for a whole lot, and what she does is she just tells me, will you please give this child personal, explain the instructions to them again like this. I know, I mean, I don't have to get on my phone at IEPs. I don't know how to put something there. That's all I need to know. Or they'll say, will you check in with this child 2 times during this hour and give them encouragement so that they will keep working. That's enough to tell me to know and be, or okay, this child's very sensitive. I don't need to know anything else. And as a parent of a child that I want to have working, same thing. But just that much helps a lot. But that's all I need. Because I'm not entitled to know everything.
Right. Yeah, I would hope that that's what you're seeing from teachers. I will express that to teachers. Make sure we're very clear of behavior issues. Make sure we're very clear on academic support that needs to be given. But if I put a child has autism, my son has autism. He's very high functioning and he's going to be a smart aleck to you. It doesn't mean he needs somebody to go and talk for him or, you know, help him go to the bathroom. No, he's just a smart aleck and he's going to just tell you how it is all day long. And so somebody needs to know that they have to just be on top of that. You know, autism is too broad to say a child has autism. That doesn't explain anything. So hopefully they do explain that. I will address that with the teachers, at least at my school, that just explain those expectations. Okay. Next. Sure. You should have a sub binder, but like I said, emergencies happen, so you might not have a binder that has everything wrote down. So just lean on those neighbors. If you do have a child that it does say check or help them with this or they need that, ask the teaching partner, because odds are that teaching partner has directly worked with that child and they understand what you need, or maybe that teaching partner just needs to take care of that child that day. If it's really that hard, they can take in that kid that's having a hard time. Okay? Because there's a lot of them that if they do have a need, they don't adjust well to you being in their environment. You're not a normal. Okay, so what do you need to prep in the lesson plan? So make sure you just go through them. If a teacher has done their job right, you will have too much to accomplish that day. That is our goal. We are going to overwhelm you with busy work. And that's okay. Like, if you make it clear through my lesson plans, I did something wrong, okay? So don't ever feel bad that you accomplished everything. That's okay too. It just means that you're going to need fillers. And I'll talk about that more in a minute. Let's see. So if you ever need copies kid doesn't have it so manipulative, they're like building blocks, counting bears, whatever goes with your activity. If you need that and the kids don't have one-on-one this year, I wouldn't give it to them because the germs. You don't know who's touched it last. You don't know if it's been sanitized. I know that we're talking as a grade and giving each kid their own little collection that they'll have in their cubby that they'll go get. Hopefully that would be listed. If it's not, don't do it. I just wouldn't mess with it because you don't know what's been sanitized. You don't know if the teacher was sick. And, you might not know. I don't know. I would hope you'd know if the teacher was sick. But don't touch the manipulatives if the teacher hasn't completely explained that to you. Just not worth it. And I do also know libraries and classrooms might be a little different this year. I know at our school we were just told to have a basket where if the kid touches the book goes in there and it stays in there for 3 days because they're saying 72 hours is surface contact to kill it. So again, if they have a library, if they touch a book, don't put it back on the shelf. Just keep track of them. I don't know that every class will be like that. Okay, so what do lesson plans look like? There is no set lesson plan. So you guys walk in and you're like, oh, that's nothing like the lesson plan I saw yesterday. So let me show you just a second. Okay, it's fine. So I've noticed, I'm not trying to stereotype you, but men are very short and to the point in their lesson plans and women are flowery. Like overall when I see them, that's kind of what I've noticed. So they don't break it down for you as much. Do what you need to fill in the lines. If you don't clearly understand the broke down pinpoints, that's okay. Do your best. Ask a neighbor. If they don't know, skip it. Mark it. Say, I don't know what you're talking about. That's fine. Because there are some plans that make no sense to me when I look at them. AM and PM kindergarten. You're going to have to notice real quick that they do not work perfectly in sync all day. Nothing is the same that happens in AM versus PM. I taught kindergarten for 4 years. I know the pain. Like, don't try to expect that it's going to happen the same the next round. So just start your brain all the way over at lunchtime and say, new class, new way, nothing's going to be the same schedule. Because that's not how it works. Okay. Don't leave the class like that. This is like, I walked into a room and this is what it looked like after the sub had been there. We were like, what? They took Post-it notes and folded them into an airplane and shot them all over the room. Like, Post-it notes are like sacred teacher treasures. And when you shot them clear across the room and then left them and not even cleaned it up, you're going to get pulled up. So, if there's any chance, make those kids help you clean up the room. That is not a job you need to do on your own. They did it. You don't need to clean it up. They just need to. Make sure, let's see, that by the time the bell rings, make sure you know if you need to go somewhere when the bell rings. We do not, at our school, have you guys do bus feeding. For the most part, you should be, unless you're in kindergarten. You've got to walk those little kids outside. But I don't know that that's clear across the district. You might have bus duty. So make sure that you've looked in those plans and that you know where your body needs to be when the bell rings. Also, yeah.
So there's been many times where I walked in and it's like, oh, you have bus duty, by the way.
It should be in the hour.
It's not always. Trust me, it's not. And then you make plans when you have to take that job or you have a plan, say, you work at the high school and you plan on being out there by 4 o'clock, and you plan on renting your
thing you might just do is go next door and say, hey, she has bus duty, or can I have you switch with them to that teaching partner? I know the teaching partner will be like, but they should understand, like, you have 10 minutes to decide how to teach a whole day. That's pretty rough. So I would express that.
The other point I was going to bring up is just some certain para jobs, you don't get lunch. You have to give that kid during lunch, and so they put that on the job too, because if you plan on calling your doctor and making appointments, during your lunch hour, and you find out you don't get a lunch, you're with this kid during lunch. So they need to put those on the job.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Okay, one other thing is make sure you leave feedback. As a teacher, I don't like to come back and get that it was perfect, because I know it wasn't. Leave feedback for me, if not for my kids. If my kids were great for you, hallelujah, leave it. And I will praise them. But please leave feedback for me. If I can become a better prepper for you, why not do that? I'm not going to take that as a negative. Just choose your words wisely. If you want to be negative, go for it. But yeah. And then don't beat the kids out the door. Make sure that we have literally had the bell rings, the sub's gone. Okay. So if you're really angry about how the day went, tell the partner. Like, I do want feedback, because then my partner comes back and goes, how did it go? There was like closet over there. There's not, nobody talked to anybody. I don't know. Like, express that. Share with us. One more. No. Oh, yeah. Just do that. Goodbye. Keep going. Okay, so make sure you have a sub bag of some kind that has your tricks in it. If you are a sugar person, fine. Like, they'll live for a day if you give them sugar. Unless it says in the IEP, don't give them sugar, and the sub don't give them sugar. But like, it's fine to be like, you get a sucker if you go all day long, and at the end you get it. Like, that's fine.
Okay, so you know how I do it.
Yeah.
How am I going to do it? How should I have an incentive order? And then after, should I not do it? And then you look like very
So she said she has a treasure box that they come pick from. I would say hand it to them. Don't give them the option. Just let them this is for you. Yeah. Make sure that they're not digging in it this year. Yeah. So hand those out. Come with a game. So come with some kind of game in mind, especially I think in middle school. Like, those plans might be a little short. Those kids are not too old to play some little games you come up with, and they'll do it, kind of. Bring water and snacks and lunch and ibuprofen. Bring your favorite book. That's the biggest thing I would say. Like, bring a book that's from your time period of when you were in school, and share that with the kids if you have time, as a filler, because odds are they haven't read it, because they just read whatever's new on the shelf that we got out of the book order. So it's not something from our time. So bring something to share with them to fill that in. And I promise you, I got read stories in college, and that's some of the times that stick in my head the most. A stupid little story, with a kid's story, made a big impact. So honestly, those can still make impacts there to the upper grades. And then, yeah, that's next one, and that's it. I just want to say thank you. I know that my friends that are teachers, we always are very appreciative about subs. Even when I hear someone talking bad about some way a sub did something, I'm like, did they show up? Did the kids accomplish something? Then you won, right? That's the goal. Just get something. You should not be teaching new plans to these kids as a first day sub. You shouldn't be teaching them brand new material. And if you are and it doesn't go well, don't feel bad about yourself, because it should be a review time. We don't expect you to be giving them brand new information. That's as a first day sub. So, yes.
Is there any advice teachers get as to how they introduce the idea that if they know the grades, they will be in class, obviously? Treat the substitute with the same respect you treat me. Do what they ask you to do unless there's something to express your concern, but, don't, mitigate the as we go well, we have a free day of substitutes.
Yeah. Yeah, I know in my classroom, I go over, it's an adult, we all give respect to adults, it's like they walk in, I don't care who they are. And then I usually leave a note to my class on the board for them to read when they come in, explaining that they do have a sub and I do expect these things to happen. And then if I hear good back from the sub, this will happen. So I do know I do that. I know that that's something that could be expressed. Angie, is there a chance that you can maybe make a letter to teachers saying these would be great? Yeah. So yeah, I think so too. That's a good idea.
So I wonder if I could put in a request that we just want to help the teacher. I know about privacy and legal laws, but if we have a note to say, Elizabeth has medical problems, please be aware. And I have been teaching and she will just walk out of my classroom and I'll ask them, I'm like, well, where did that sit go? And they say, oh, well, they're diabetic and I'm probably giving myself a shot. Or they might be feeling nauseous because of complications. And now I just want to know if there are medical issues they need to be aware of.
Yeah, that would be really important. I know in my plans I highlight anything, like I have had kids with an EpiPen the last couple of years, so I highlight, like this kid has an EpiPen, so it jumps out in your face because that's very important. So hopefully, yes, we will get that over there.
Things like peanut allergies and that kind of thing. Yeah, the class will wear, but it would be nice if stuff that would come in that we know is they have a specific real problem.
Yeah. Well, and when you bring in a treat to the class, dum-dums are great. They're peanut allergy in there. There's white ones, so those red allergy, you know, they have the white. They're pretty simple. I mean, if a kid can't have sugar, they can't have sugar. But that's a pretty good fix. And if a kid can't have sugar, they probably have some kind of treat bag already in there from mom that you can get from her. Give them a sticker or something like that. Yeah. Very good.
Okay, sorry. Is it possible to like have the I'm gonna do that. Is it possible to have the teachers like leave a note saying, hey, this classroom cannot have this specific just in the classroom? Because if I need something because my blood sugar is getting low and I need to have a snack with me, I don't want to accidentally set off Johnny who has celiacs or Susie who has a peanut allergy. Is there a way to like at least make that note so that way I can have what I need to be able to function and not put the other students at risk?
Nancy, is there a way that if a kid has a medical food, something that is brought to her attention as they check in? Because like she was saying if I brought a snack for nuts for the day and I have it, I don't want to trigger anybody or they need to be told as they're walking in the door.
Okay, I'll discuss that and see if there's something we can do.
Okay.
A lot of teachers just have a sign on it that say, peanut allergy, don't bring in peanut.
Yeah, I was gonna say, our school
Teachers have put that on the door.
Hopefully.
The kid that I had, the parents requested that everybody just work as they normally did and that kid moved. So
Yeah, I think it all depends on that.
it just depends on the severity.
It's just good to know so that way I don't have the snack with me already.
Again, very practical thing. I hate going into a teacher's desk. I never want to open your drawers ever, so it's so helpful. If there's a stapler, a sticky note, a paper clip, all of those basics in plain sight is just such a nice thing to have instead of digging for them. And
The other thing you do is have a sub bag.
well, I do carry that, but when you have to give out, I can't have 5 staples, whatever.
Yeah.
Yes, but it's very helpful to have that available.
Yeah.
Well, and the other thing is, for you guys, it is really awkward when I look over and there's a sub digging through my partner's desk. Don't dig through their desk. Come and ask me. I can probably find it. I can give you mine. Like, it's just kind of like that's their privacy area. So try not to dig through their things. Just go ask, and somebody will get you whatever you need.
I've had, put in the room and they got the projector and everything else, and usually they always put it in that front desk, the top floor, all of the classrooms with the exact same setup almost. So I knew exactly that's the only door I can look in. I think I need to carry on, I think they know it's there. But I agree, I hate for certain teachers that their desk is because of great stuff.
Yeah.
But if you have to, you have to. So I just try not to move it around. But I agree, I think it's good idea to leave something
there are some lesson plans, and if you do a good job with the lesson plans, it takes some time to get familiar with it and think through a complex rubric or like a radio communications class or whatever to do a good job of it. I just want to show up quite early before class starts.
If you have 30 minutes, you can be there at 30 minutes ahead of time. We'll talk about that. Okay.
Is there a way that if you're going to be in a virtual classroom, that the secretary can make sure that you get a key? I had never taught IOTA. When I was in a virtual classroom, it was kind of, I asked for a key, but it was big to do and a big inconvenience. We got locked out of the school multiple times, trying to go to lunch, trying to do this. If you're in, can the teachers make sure, or the secretary, if we're in a portable, we have a key?
Okay, I will talk to them so that they can talk about that. I know we talked about that before.
Because that's the only place I've ever had that. But
Yeah, I had a teacher who got locked out of the classroom, who got locked out of the school, and, you know, okay.
The other thing is that I was going to bring up too is make sure your door's locked. Sometimes janitors are in a hurry, they come down and unlock it and they don't relock it. When you get there, that's the first thing you should check is that your door is locked. Because if there is a lockdown, you are in charge of defending those kids. And you need to make sure that door gets shut and locked, and you can't lock it. So you need to make sure that it's already locked for you.
So make sure you can get in the classroom and then make sure that the custodian comes back and locks it for you.
Well, the bars are supposed to be locked.
They're also, yeah.
What's the other thing that's going with the doors being locked? Every school has a different policy. So you go into some schools, they're like, oh, we never shut the door, we never lock the door. And then others are like, oh, we better stay closed and lock it all the time. So nothing is like the same. You go in and you learn from your neighbor if you lock your door or shut it. Because none of you
Yeah, be sure and always ask your teacher next door.
They should be locked though, because you don't have the ability to lock those doors.
Well, except that some of the older schools.
The older schools, but newer ones.
Yeah, the newer schools are fine because they're, you know, they all have the lockdown, you know. But I'll bring that up.
Yeah, all of them are different.
Most of them have those magnets too, they have on the door, yes, or, and I think this is throw it in your bag in case they don't have that magnet.
Okay.
They help.
Okay.
These slide action of the Home Depot, or all the top last year, so I have it. Like, paper, roll, or one, and find out.
Okay. Take a picture of it and send it to me, Kelsey, so I can put it up. Okay, any other questions pertinent to elementary?
Just so you know, like, I can send you a list, Nancy, of like snacks that you have to bring if you need to have snacks that have all of those calories taken out of.
Oh, that'd be great.
Healthy, good ones. I can always take pictures of them. Most of the people get at grocers, you can get them at other grocery stores, so that you never have to worry about that. You never know now if your kid, it's just all of a sudden has an allergy.
Yeah.
It's scary, it's dangerous, and I'll make sure they're affordable ones.
Yes, please.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Shannon. Appreciate it. I'm going to give some time to Kara. I'm going to go get some water, and I'll bring some water in for you. And I know it's a little warm. I apologize. Are you over it? Kara teaches Spanish at Thunder Ridge, and she is an amazing person. One of my bestest friends. Sister. Okay.
Nancy called and asked me to do this, and I just hope I am giving you guys what she asked for and what you need and want. But I kind of want to get to know you guys as a group first. You've probably already done this, but how many of you are first-time subs? First-year subs? Okay, how many of you have been subbing for 3 or more years? Okay, thank you. You've probably been, some of you have been in my classroom. I recognize some faces. How many of you don't take high school jobs? Cool, so take a nap. Right? I was a sub. When I went back to school to get my teaching certificate, I decided that I wanted to have some of that experience, and so I went in and decided to sub. And I knew I didn't want to sub in the elementary level. I'm so grateful for those of you who can, and I'm thinking that the trade idea is amazing and how awesome my high school kids would be if you were like, I have summers for you. And, you know, it's the same. You got to do it 150 times if you do it that way. But anyway, so it's just a very different creature, and I just knew that's not my specialty. I work well with the older kids, and so I subbed in, even middle school here, honestly. So I subbed in middle school, and I also subbed in high school. And I know that it can be really confusing. So Nancy's request to me was, how to teach them, how to go through sub-plans. And my mom was in town at the time, and she's also a retired high school Spanish teacher. Dad followed in her footsteps. And she said, well, it's kind of a lesson in futility. Kind of, because every sub-plan is going to be so different. But I know the tools that I used to get me through when I was a sub were pretty much the same kind of tools. And I put those up here at the top, and I do not honestly know what happened. This was a little different. I don't know what happened for this whole thing, but technical difficulties today. Okay, number 1, plan for technical difficulties as a teacher, especially now with the changes that are going on, so many of the things that we're going to be doing as we all spent this time transitioning to online school at the end of last trimester, and understanding that at any moment that ball could drop again, or we're going to be so most of what we're going to be doing is going to be technology based, I would say, in a lot of circumstances. So don't be scared of technology. Just ask somebody, get the help that you need, learn, and you'll be fine. But we all are on this. Teachers, and I have co-teachers who were completely paperless before the COVID hit. Not me. I love paper. I love the hands-on something, texture, touch in your hand kind of a thing. And so that was a steep learning curve for me. I had to put all my material online. And other teachers are like, I don't even touch a computer throughout the whole day. I only teach out of my textbook or my whatever. And so that learning curve was even steeper. But we all have to do it together, right? So anyway, so things to look for. The first thing I want to know at the door is, as a sub, I wanted to know when my prep was. Because if my prep was first hour, guess what? I had an extra hour to prepare, to go over these sub-plans. If I don't have a prep hour till 6th hour, which if you walk into my classroom, that's the case, I don't have prep until 6. Then I gotta be so familiar with all of my plans. Okay, I have to at least have my bearings, make sure I found everything the teacher has indicated for me to find, and so forth. And I totally agree. Was it Shauna or Shanna? Shanna. I totally agree with Shanna in that I sent out a message to all of my fellow Thunder Ridge staff, and I said, can you guys send me just some of your last year's lesson plans? And so I'll have Nancy share these with you. There's no way we're going to, just so you can glance and look and just see the lesson plans. Some of them are 7, 8 pages long. Yes. And they have every little thing in them that you could possibly need. And some of them are kids know what they're doing. Good luck. And that could be the case for some teachers. Some teachers will totally prepare their students the day before and say, you're going to have a sub. So when you walk in, you're going to be working with your partners, and you're going to be doing this, and you're going to need to get the Chromebook out and do this, or you're going to need whatever the situation is. So the students might know what they're doing. So they might just leave you a little blurb, but there will always be questions, because I guarantee you when the sub was explaining, or the teacher was explaining that, the sub actually, or the students were not listening, right? So there's always going to be questions, and then there's going to be the kid who said, she told us yesterday, and the other is going to be like, no, I didn't hear anything, right? So that's just the way, you're dealing with high school kids. So look at your schedule, find out how much time you have to prepare. If you need to be 100% on board, like if you have a first and a second, and then your third is prep, then make sure you're ready for first and second, and then you can take your, to figure out what you're doing for fourth, fifth, and sixth. I try to schedule the time frame in my sub plans kind of at the top, because sometimes it's hard to find a bell schedule. by you, and as a sub, I would walk in because my time management was not very good and I'm pretty long-winded. I would walk in and I would just set a timer on my phone. No harm in you guys using your phone to set a timer so that you know when, like if the teacher said spend 20 minutes on this so that you can move on to this next activity, then I would try to respect that, right? Because we're trying to, you know, give you things that are manageable and doable for you and for the students. But don't, if they ask you to spend 20 minutes on an activity, if the kids are doing really good and they seem like they're on task, don't spend the whole hour, because when the teacher gets back the next day, sometimes it's frustrating and it's hard when we realize that certain things weren't even dealt with, that we needed to be dealt with. And I imagine high school is a little bit different than elementary school, and only because I know that a lot of the teachers that you'll go in for are like your dual credit courses. You are preparing kids for major exams that will help them to get college credit or get AP credit or whatever. And so sometimes it's pretty important that we try to go where the teacher wants us to go that day. Sometimes if I know I'm going to have a sub, I'm like, this is going to be my culture day. I'm a Spanish teacher, right? So I have my culture day sub plans. But other times, we've got to have a test. Like I need you to administer a test for me. And if that's the case, because of our time frame, then I'm going to be very, very specific on the procedures that my students use in my classroom to take tests, which is, you know, all phones should be put away. I have them throw their backpacks on their table in between them as kind of a little bit of a barrier, to remind them to avoid the temptation to look at their neighbor's paper, kind of a thing. Things are going to be a little different this year, obviously. I actually now am a deskless teacher, so that doesn't even apply. I don't have any desks in my classroom. So we just have all chairs, and it's awesome. Because when I'm teaching, now I can do a whole bunch more of the stuff that I need to do as a language teacher to involve the students in the activities so that we can do this language thing. Okay? Anyway, so technical needs, we talked about that a little bit. How many of you have done Kahoot as a sub before? How many of you don't know what Kahoot is? It was so funny because as I was looking through some of the sub plans that my teachers were sending me, some of them were saying Kahoot. Just go home right now, or go home, or just jot it down. It's Kahoot, Kahoot.com. Just go look at it. Find out what it is. It's a great tool for a teacher to set something up for a sub, for you to be able to get in and practice with the kids. Okay? It's a great learning tool, review tool, and if you haven't used it yet, you probably will. How many of you have never had to project your screen onto the board for the students to see? How many of you have projected the screen onto the board for the students to see? Okay, well that's really good, because I worry. I give like really, really detailed information because I want you to be able to get the screen to the board, because I know if you can't get the screen to the board, class is over in so many ways, right? Okay. I would look for the name and location of another teacher. Most teachers will provide you with somebody. We don't have like partners, but I will tell you always, Austin's next door, he's more than happy to help. And he is, he's more than happy to help. Or somebody across the hall. I have a super awesome technology savvy guy across the hall, and he would be the one I would go to for that. Look for the teacher's phone number. I will, if I am able to take calls or text messages throughout the day, I will leave you my phone number. Get that, and please, I never care if the sub is texting me. Don't be like, well, I don't want to text her because she's, you know, whatever. She's not here. Please text me. It is hard to leave our classrooms. It's hard. I don't like it. It's a lot more, it seems like a lot more work actually to leave our classrooms. And it's just, I guess I'm mama bear in a way. Like I want to protect and make sure that we're doing okay. So I'm so grateful when you go in there and you have a successful day with the kids. I totally agree with what she said about tell us. Don't say it was a great day, great class. Because again, same thing. You'll go through 5 of my classes and I know exactly which kids gave you a run for your money, and you haven't told me. And I would love to hear about that. My rule, to your question right here, when you asked about that before, if I know I'm going to have a sub, then my rule is I tell the kids the day before, I say, listen, I say, being a sub is hard. I did it. I know, right? And I know that the minute I walked in the door as a sub, that those kids are like, sub, right? Fresh meat, like we can do whatever we want. They don't know we have a safety chart. They don't know this. They don't know anything. They don't know the teacher's policies. And so some of them are like that. They walk in, they see a sub, and they're like, yay, sub! Or they walked in before on me, and I maybe wore my hair different, or I had it dyed because it was Halloween or something, and they're like, and I look up and they're like, oh, I thought we had a sub. Super dagger to the chest, right? So what I tell them is it's hard, and this is exactly why it's hard, because unknown circumstances, unknown kids, unknown plans, you're not even a science person, right? And you're having to teach AP something science, and you're scared out of your mind, right? Because I would not take some of those jobs because I was like, those kids are going to I'm going to look so stupid, right? So anyway, so I say, if for any reason your name shows up on my report, on my sub-feedback, in a negative way, we will have a face-to-face conversation. You and I, every time, okay? And if I need to, it most likely will go with an email home to your parents. Just saying, the sub had a hard time today because, blah, 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 blah. That's all. And they know. And so usually my students are pretty dang well behaved, and they don't want that to happen. Yeah.
So can I ask, I don't have these handwritten notes for anything. Would you put a handwritten note, or do you like, I know my days off,
Handwritten. I prefer handwritten because I have to take the time to go in there. I will see it on my desk, I will skim it, and sometimes I will take the time to read every detail, but I might not get to every detail until my prep, which is 6 hours, right? And so I would say, write it, be concise, but real with us, right? And then, because you're taking attendance, you guys, if you're taking attendance online, I do not need to know when they went to the bathroom. I do not need to know who was here and who wasn't, because I assume that you took appropriate attendance correctly. But some subs have left me sub notes where it's just like, so-and-so left at this time and came back this time. So-and-so was not here, so, these kids, and we don't need that, okay? In the high school level, we don't need that.
Kelsey, if you have a question, if there's been a problem in the classroom, something that you think needs to be addressed, on a level that I need to know, be sure and fill out the ASOP.
Oh, okay.
So that I can,
So feedback for Nancy on that level, but feedback for teacher, I would just assume just a piece, like a note on my desk. I'll see it first thing when I get in the morning. I'll glance at it, I'll read through it, then I'll know, because 15 minutes later my students are walking through the door, and I need to be a little bit prepared, right? I need to be prepared to be able to say, how did it go yesterday? Did you get through this? Did you not get through this? And all that kind of stuff. So separate seating charts. A lot of times teachers will leave the seating chart separate from the sub plan. And that's because I don't want to print it every time I have a sub or whatever. And so I just have it in my sub folder. And I also have it on a clipboard. Same with sub through emergency exit info, separate. And there was a conversation about student medical needs and other needs that they might have. And so that information basically should be indicated, like insights into student behavior. Like sometimes I'll say, this is a small class, but they're going to be a handful, right? And just watch out for the boys, whatever, this or what, they'll probably try to walk all over you kind of a thing. And that's pretty much all you need to know, right? And if there's a little bit more information, I will also give names of students who I think are really good helpers in the class, who are good to lean on. I also tell you if I have TAs. Sometimes I have 3 TAs in a trimester, and so this TA is very helpful with this TA is very helpful with this. Some of my TAs are there to help me with student council stuff, because I am the student government advisor, but others of my TAs are there because they're really helpful in Spanish. Like, they're good. And they can help. And some of them speak Spanish natively. Okay. Now, so these are just samples of different lesson plans. And so I'm just going to skim through them really, really quick. So here's an English teacher that is a very wordy English teacher. No surprise, right? English teacher, wordy. Okay? So this is detail, 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 step by step by step, the things that you need to do. I might have been an English teacher in another life, because I also think I'm kind of wordy in my sub-plans, because I do step by step. I want there to be a semblance of, I guess, something similar in the classroom. It's helpful when the kids know that you're there, not as this like complete individual that they can't, well, you are there as an individual, but that they can just totally manipulate you, but that you have some of these little tools that their teacher uses, and they're like, oh, she makes us do that too. And you're like, yeah. Yeah, so respect me, because I know, and I've talked to your teacher, and she's told me what to do, right? I would use those. Anyway, so there's a teacher that teaches English and French, okay, that I did a lesson plan here. So if you walk into my classroom, for example, and like I said, this is not the final product, because I don't know really what happened, and my computer may have stopped saving as I was creating this. But if you walk into my classroom, you're going to have Spanish 1A, you're going to have Spanish 2A, you're going to have Spanish 3A, and you're going to have a student council class. So I teach 5 periods out of the day, right? So that means your plans will change 4 times out of 5 in that day. You'll repeat pretty much the same plan as once with variation because you'll have different students, but you just need to be prepared that things change a little. I do try to keep my plans very similar, so we might be doing a test, but we'll be doing a Spanish 1 level test versus Spanish 2 level test. It's going to look a little different, right? And so I do try to keep things a little parallel, and it helps a ton with subs, but I know that not everybody does, right? So you could be doing a completely different subject with biology, and then you could be going to physics, and they're not the same, right? They're just not. I don't have a PE subplan on here. No PE subplan sent me anything, or teacher sent me anything. I don't have an example of anything for the special education department, which I know those are all going to look very different as well. So you kind of got to go in that mental game. Something else just blew out of my brain. But I would just make sure that you're getting right to that schedule, finding out what you're doing, make sure you can locate all of the materials first. Otherwise, it's just not helpful.
I want to say one here that one of the constant problems I see in high school now is 2 of them. One, whenever we need computers, there's never computers around. And I have to run next door and say, where are the computers? They go, oh, we don't know that they have to call somebody else. So you might just mention that to them that if we're going to expect us to have computers out there. And
well, I would hope that that's a foregone conclusion, but it's not always obvious. It's not always obvious, right? Yeah.
And number 2, I went into one class and the teacher said, all you got to do is play this great video to set my access to the video. So I ended up having to call him, and he was really annoyed that I bothered him today. And he said, well, you have to go down to 5 doors down. So I had to find someone from 5 doors down, and then the teacher came in, who finally just logged in for me and said, here's my password, here's my login, here's what you got to do. And I had to do it 5 times, so I had to log out, go back to the roll, and go back.
Yeah, I've been guilty of that because sometimes as teachers we don't know what your restrictions are, right? And so yeah, we need, and so I'm learning as well how to try to make it easier for ourselves in that technology department. And I imagine we're going to run into that this year. Has anybody here subbed in my class before? Okay. You probably don't even remember, but.
So I set up for your Spanish class, and I do love the setup because you don't have any chairs in there.
Okay, so it was later on in last year. Okay.
Yeah. So, you don't have any desks in there, and I don't remember, and I sub in the high schools, I just sub high school.
Yeah.
And if you do run into
into some problems with technology, but I've never had something that's been like totally that I haven't been able to like overcome. Either having a teacher, the kids are really actually quite helpful. Like I really do like the high school kids, and so there are ways that you can work around it. And I have had to text a sub if I could, you know, like to try to get into whatever I need to get in. But there is ways that people are quite helpful, and you just have to just roll with it.
Yeah, a lot of times for basic technology, your best resource is the students. Okay. For the other stuff, for usernames and passwords and blocking and stuff, I've tried to create different. Like I've even created like a sub name, username for my Kahoot account, where I get it on there and then I give you a username and password for that, hoping it works. But then it's always you just never know if it's going to work, and you don't know if your sub is just going to be like missing just a small little detail. Well, maybe it's working, but the screen isn't on right or something, right? And so sound can be a beast. Yeah. Any other questions for high school?
Just a point. And Nancy, this is kind of for you and the law purposes. Most teachers do not realize the limitations for access that subs have.
Yeah, exactly.
They say, okay, here's the videos right here on Google. Well, I don't have access to them.
Exactly.
Okay? Please put it on a thumb drive, put it on a DVD.
So if I give you a link to a YouTube video, yes or no? Okay. Say that again. You've done it on your phone? Oh, that's very good. There you go. Well, you guys,
Scott realized, I think today, the first time, that there is a real problem with that. And so,
yeah, and that's what I was saying. Now, I sometimes don't know what your limitations are. So when I get a sub text to me, they're like, well, I'm logging in, but it says this is blocked and I can't do or I can't see. So, yeah. Well, and I have access because I would take several specific steps to get that permission on my personal username. So it makes a whole lot of sense to not do that, right? Which is a bummer because, Nancy, like language, how many of you speak Spanish in here? Okay, well, so please be my sub, right? But if you don't speak the other language, I still need a sub, and so does the German teacher and the French teacher and the math. I mean, we all need access to, because you've got so many resources with people doing these YouTube videos to teach little grammar concepts or to teach math concepts. All those resources are out there for us, but if you guys can't use them, then I just think it's sad. I think we should have access to that. So hopefully there's something there. But any others? Was there something else with that? Like I cut you off.
No, there's that need.
Yeah.
All the teachers not
Yeah. Right. Thank you. Yeah.
I've had so I would be nice if people just put their on the website, because that's how helps us, because we can log in on the computer through that and get the substitutes in that way. I've had a teacher do that, and it's just
Yeah, I like that too. If I got to see a lesson plan ahead of time, that was nice. Yeah.
I'm under the impression that there's like a Chromebook per student in most of the schools.
No, so like there at Thunder Ridge, depending on department, there are so many carts per department. The English department has way more carts because there's way more English classes, right?
Would it be feasible if you have a subplan that involves technology, instead of having to substitute, put it through the projector because they may or may not have access?
Yeah.
Would it be easier to request Chromebooks for the students then, so that they can access it?
If the students have access to it, yes, but they also have limitations because they're locked into their D93
Are the
accounts as
students
well.
allowed to use YouTube on the internet?
I don't know.
In my experience, like 65% of
I think there's certain ones that are blocked and certain ones that are excused or approved list. And so, yeah, and it's hard to know sometimes, so good. And with the sharing, I would say sometimes, like I have to tell you, my co-teacher, he needs the card second period, which is why it's not in my classroom right now. Somebody was talking about that. It's not in my classroom because my co-teacher needs the second period, but you're going to actually need a third period. So send a student down at the end of second, or go yourself and get and grab the card, kind of thing. Anyway. If you guys have questions. Well, I thank you guys because I honestly know that it's hard and it's scary when we hear that we're having sub shortages, and it's scary going into this COVID year and knowing that we're going to all need to work together so that these kids can get their education this year. And we won't be able to do it without subs who are willing and able. So anyway.
So will you try and share that with me again?
Yeah, I'm going to go back and find the actual one. I'm going to share it again. I don't know why my sharing isn't working.
She shared it with me 3 times today. Kim, could you
Everybody share.
Actually, while we're still there.
Kara?
Can I play captain off this?
Sure. I like games.
Is there a way that the teachers in the next couple of days, it sounds like, let the teachers know that the subs want to take their classes as serious as they do? Because I think 95% of the time, I love the lesson plans. I've got fabulous teachers. But there's still that other 5 to 10% that I wonder how serious they take their own classes. It's extreme. Except for the teacher. And his lesson plan, he knew he was going to be gone for a while. I think his lesson plan was saying this is emergency lesson plan. That day, he said, take him into the room, put him on machines, have him change every 5 minutes. If there's none of machines, have him just be out in the hall, move down to his desk, and sit up. And I thought, okay, great. Had 36 students in class, 18. I think it was all over.
And it's super hard to manage, right?
And so the next period happened to be my prep period. I was on my activities as high school team. And I hated going away from this.
Well, and I love that, and I agree with what Shannon said, in that we're probably not doing our jobs to prepare for you if you have extra time, or if there's this like lull, because that is a hard, classroom management is hard as a teacher, but so we're also super trained for that, right, to a degree. But then I would just say that, yeah, as a sub, you don't know those kids super hard. So we need to overplan for you.
Like I said, there's such a small amount of...
No, I understand. I have the same similar experiences. Okay, anything else?
I just have one thing. I usually don't see junior high school. That's where I like to be. But these kids, my main concern is that they're on their technology so much, not doing what they're supposed to be doing. You give the lesson, but as soon as like Disney Plus came out for free through Verizon, all of them are on there watching Disney Plus while they're trying to supposedly do their work, but it's like you can't control it. You walk around and they're just constantly, like they switch screens constantly on YouTube where they have more tabs open, and then you don't know what they're doing, so they're constantly watching videos or doing something else that they're not supposed to do. So,
yeah, I mean, my phone policies are I don't know how respectful my students are of my phone policies when you walk in the door, but I have a phone carrier in the back, it's like a pocket thing in the back, and I just say, the instant a kid's on the phone when they shouldn't be, I never touch their phone, right? Because I don't want that liability or whatever. But I say, hey, and we talk about this at the beginning of the year, I say, it's not a big deal. If you're on your phone and I see you on your phone when you're not supposed to be, there will be times when it's okay that you're on your phone. And I'm not going to freak out, okay? But if you're on your phone when I'm trying to give a lecture or when something is going on, then I will just look at you and say, hey, can you go put your phone in the pocket? And then I tell them, I say, and it's not a big deal. The whole class is going to go, oh, she's on her phone, she's in trouble. And don't make a big deal out of it because that's stupid and it's a waste of time. So they get up, they put their phone in their pocket, they quietly sit back down, and I try to make it as least disrespectful disruptive as possible, and I try to prepare them for that. But
well, like I've heard through other teachers that there's programs that they have, which I wish they could get with some, that they can see everybody's computer and what they're doing on it. Like there's a way for them to look at their YouTube and see. They won't give it to us. They only give it to us. And so if they give it to us, we can actually monitor what the kids are doing on there.
I don't know. That's really cool, but it's super beyond me. It's not something that I know about. I'll talk to you. So yeah, I'll talk to you.
Some of the teachers have on the lesson plans if the kids are on the computers, they're supposed to walk around it. They're learning, and sometimes either computers from the teacher says.
Proximity is huge. Have you guys talked about proximity yet? No. Proximity, the positioning of your body as a teacher or as a sub is huge. I just made her really nervous. Like, she automatically is, I don't know, but she's very aware that I am right here. And so move your body around the classroom. And if they're being naughty, I guarantee you they're looking up at you every 3 seconds. Where is she? Where is she? Where is she? Where is she? So just, and you don't even have to, come on, right? They're so aware. So definitely use your body. They call it like a green zone, a yellow zone, and a red zone. If you're in the red zone, I guarantee you they're off task. If they're the kids that's going to be off task. If you're in the yellow zone, they're aware. They're aware you're there. And they make...
You can't walk through. Like the computer lab, you can't get through. Or you walk like against the window and you can't get
so do your best. Do your best to be like up and down, up and down. The more you're up and moving, you can't fight technology. We have to learn how to deal with the technology that is just part of our life. We can't try to fight it.
Another technique that I've used that works for dismantling that situation is you say to the student, I see you. And all of a sudden their bubble bursts.
Or if you just mention, hey, phone's down, everybody. I see somebody, and they don't know. Nobody knows who you're seeing, right? Nobody knows who you're seeing. It's very ambiguous, but all of a sudden that kid knows that you know, right? And so that helps everybody. And that's a quick fix. Okay. Thanks, Kara and Nancy. Okay, we're going to quickly wrap up. I know you've been here for 2.5 hours, and I appreciate it. I wanted to thank Sam and Phil back there. They've been recording for us today. So this will give me a chance to go back and get all those questions that we need to get answers to. So let's give them a hand. They're our D93 news team. Okay, let's talk about just the last couple of things. You guys know about this schedule, right? Scott talked about it. 5 days a week for the K through 6. Second and the fourth Monday they're on. So there will be no substitute second, fourth Mondays in the elementary schools.
Throughout the school year?
Throughout the school year, unless things happen. Unless we, unless we get bad. 7 through 12, they go to school Tuesday through Friday. They're off every Monday. So there will probably not be substitutes in the high schools on Mondays unless you are a long-term, unless you end up as a long-term sub. Okay? So that's the way it's going to be for the next little while. Scott announced that he's going to be doing Thursday notifications. Okay? So every Thursday, they'll do a notification. If you have kids in the district, you'll get an email. If you don't, I'll post it. Okay? That will notify us what phase we'll be going into the next Monday, if there's a change. Okay? If things are the same, you probably won't hear from me. But if it looks like we're going to be changing for Monday, like going to the 202 or the, whatever change. So just watch for emails from me. Okay? Please make sure you know where your school locations are. Okay? Don't wait till the morning of.
Addresses for schools are on the web page. There's addresses for all the schools, and you know, especially as the weather gets bad, you know, make sure you give them plenty of time to get there, okay? So that we don't end up with a problem. Our schools have different times, okay? The start times are not affected this year. Start times will be the same. I will post a new schedule with start times. And make sure you're looking, make sure when it says start time is at 7:50, that's the time you should have been in the classroom 30 minutes at that point, okay? So don't come wandering in at 7:45 and wonder why you can't get, you know, going on it, okay? Yes?
This is a bit of an issue for me, particularly when I'm working in high schools, but yeah, I get there 30 minutes before, I go in, I clock in, I have to wait for the guy in front of me to clock in, and you can figure out how to do it. And then I go down to the classroom, which is on the other side of the planet.
Yes.
I come back.
Oh, you're at Thunder Ridge, right?
Anyway, that's why I'm working at D93. I come back because so they did not in fact leave the room unlocked. I get back there, by the time I get everything on the computer up on, I'm like, and they've got a 7-page set plan.
Yeah.
There are times when 30 minutes just
isn't enough.
Now, I wouldn't mind if I clocked in 45 minutes early, but didn't start giving me the time until 30 minutes. But there's times we just don't
30 minutes is not enough, especially at the high school. Just make sure when you're clocking in at the high school, the first thing you ask is my classroom open? Because they have keys that they can give you. So just make sure you ask, is my classroom open? If not, give me a key because I don't have time. Okay? And I think Thunder is too. Yeah, we're working on that. We're working on that. Now I think everything is keyed separately. I think they've been working on that.
Bill Price, the secretary, goes in the door.
Okay.
This is your desk.
Just one quick observation. Don't count on that hour. Last year, at least half the time someone would say, here's a note to, here's what we need you to know during your planning hour.
Oh, yeah.
Because they're so critically short. And it's going to be worse this year. Last year, we were only like 20 subs short. Now we're 50 short. They're going to need you every single hour.
Yeah, so especially in the high schools. I know Thunder does that. A lot, yeah. So just plan on, if you're going to be at Thunder, you're probably going to be in another classroom during your prep hour. Okay?
Just a note on some of the start times. If you do like some of the special ed or the DR or any of that, let's say your start time is like 7:20. Don't show up a half hour before that because they need to start at 7:20.
Right.
Like some schools at 7:50, your start time, show a half hour before that.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, so just some of those special ed classes, like the DRR classes, you have to be to the school ahead of time, and usually, I try to watch that. Usually they'll put it in the sub notes, you know, be at the school at 7:25 because you have to meet the kids. And that's only going to happen in the elementary schools. Rocky, I think, does it periodically. They have some kids that have to, you know, you have to meet their bus. So I'll work on that and make sure with them that we've got that taken care of. Okay, what changed this year? Oh, that was a funny question. We have extended lunch times now. Okay, we've got everybody's doing. The elementary schools are doing, I think, 2 lunches. Is that right, Sam?
Pardon, what was that?
Elementary schools doing 2 lunches.
I can't confirm that. Probably
I
for
think
social
it's 2.
distancing, yeah.
And then the secondary is doing 3 lunches.
Yeah.
So they're quick. They only have 30 minutes. So hopefully, I've got new bell schedules. I will post them on the substitute list, so you'll be able to see what's going on for the bell schedules, especially for the middle and secondary. Okay, it's going to be a little confusing, but we'll try and make sure that information. So to find that information, it's on the D93 webpage. On the left-hand side, down the substitutes. On the right-hand side, we'll start putting all the bell schedules are old now. I'm getting ready to update those. We've just been waiting, okay? Just remember, no cell phones in the classrooms, please. Just put them in your purse. If it's an emergency, you've got them, but please no talking on your cell phones during teaching hours. Whoops. That was, where did my next dress. Business attire, no Levi's. We have some elementary schools that do not allow Levi's. So if you go in a pair of Levi's, you may be sent home. Okay? So just business attire, make sure, yeah, if you want to wear a tie, that's great. I always have trouble with teachers showing up in classrooms looking more like the students than they look like teachers. I'm sorry. You know, t-shirts with the logo on the front of it, and, just, I don't know. I think we need to be professional in our look. So, you don't have to wear a suit and a tie, and you don't have to wear a dress and hose and all that kind of stuff, but, just look professional. So, yes?
I know I've said this in the past, but there are exceptions. If you're teaching, or if you're a para in the preschool classroom, wear something comfortable that you can get down on the floor and crawl around.
That's correct.
Or find out, for instance, if we're going to do one-on-one with a special ed kid, that we're going to have to tear down the hall after them when they suddenly decide to go.
Don't wear high heels.
Yeah. So those things are good to know if you can.
Yeah, if you're subbing for a PE person, you can wear PE attire. I always had a pair of tennis shoes in my car when I sat, because it never failed. There was something going on that day that I had to have tennis shoes, and here I am in my dress shoes, and can no more move around in those than so throw something in the car.
Nancy?
Yes.
Scott said elementary will have at least 6 lunches because of the social distancing, and middle school will have 3, and high school will have 2.
Oh, middle school has 3, high school has 2, elementary has 6 lunches. So it's gonna be a long day for the lunch ladies. So just another reminder: make sure you read the handbook. Go back and review the handbook. Look at the stuff that's in there. That it'll help you. There's policies. There's classroom. There's duties. There's all sorts of things that is going to be helpful. So just go back and review that. Be prepared. We're all going to get sick. I'm sorry, it's just going to happen. I've already had COVID, didn't know I had it, but I have the antibodies, so that's a pretty good indication that I have it. All I had was a head cold, an earache, no fever, congestion, and a couple of days of body aches, but no fever. So you just don't know. You just don't know. So just keep track. Good vitamins. Keep your hands clean, keep your hands off your face, all those kinds of things. Elementary school teachers, you're going to have a horrible time keeping the kids off your legs. It's just an elementary school thing, So just be prepared. Just be prepared. There I am. In fact, I said to Keith this morning, maybe I had better go at 6 o'clock. I don't know. So we might be changing that, so we'll see. There's no substitute for a great substitute. Thanks to all of you out there. We're so grateful for your service and appreciate everything that you do for our district. And if you've got any friends that want to substitute, we'll take them one day. We'll take a sub who will come and work one day. I'm happy to do that. Has anybody got any questions? Last minute questions? Can't hear you.
Cell phones?
Yes.
I use that a lot as a timer and to look up information in small groups.
Not a problem. Not a problem. Just don't be on it and don't be playing games. No personal stuff.
And just to be clear, there will be no substitute jobs on Mondays with the exception of the first and third Monday for elementary.
Correct. Any other questions? You're amazing. Thanks, everybody.
5 weeks.
Hold on just a minute.
There's also the 5th Mondays. Those are in-school instruction.
Okay, so Monday, when there's a 5th Monday,
Yes.
there's no school for anybody.
No. There is in-school instruction. So it's in November and one in March. Those have the 5th Mondays. Those are in school.
Okay, so the 5th